Nick,
Yeah.
we did it.
Yeah.
Why did we watch all of it? Why?
You made me.
So bad.
You made me do this. You brought this upon me, you creature.
We watched all of High Guardian Spice, and it was a ride. I felt like
Oh boy.
someone had to do it because a lot of the discussion around it is just, guys, it was made by women. It's bad, and it's like, no.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are just gonna it's an easy thing to trash on, which typically people miss the point when something's easy to trash on.
Yeah, I
And
specifically.
there's a lot of. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I specifically Man, I forgot what I was gonna say. Whatever. You say whatever.
There's a lot of problems that are pretty big, but in the short term, it's easy to call out things like plot holes and things. And I think we don't want to CinemaSins ding everything about this show. We'd rather point out some of the bigger problems.
Yeah, it's such an easy thing to just go, well, it's like this group of people working on it, which I don't even agree with that notion, but just it's such an easy scapegoat to be like, well, Crunchyroll made not anime, and then they got this SJW air quote team or whatever working on it, and you can try to vilify it like that, but that just is so reductionist and not helpful at all, and it sucks. So I thought it should be our duty just to I went in wanting to at least like it somewhat, so that way I could go and be like, yeah, it was actually pretty good. But it wasn't. It was pretty awful, actually.
Yeah, no, bad.
Like,
for context, I haven't watched anything from the Adventure Time, Steven Universe era of cartoons. I grew up watching things like Samurai Jack, Johnny Bravo. I watched SpongeBob growing up. Those were the kind of cartoons I watched.
yeah,
Titans.
I watched those too, but I'm a man-child, so I kept watching them. I just didn't grow out of it. So I've seen Steven Universe, part of the Owl House, which I think is what this show is most similar to. Adventure Time, basically what people will call the Cal Arts, air quote, SJW era of Cartoon Network, which I like most of those shows. And this one is by far so much more worse than all of those shows.
Yeah.
People will criticize Steven Universe for having progressive themes, but it did them really well, and I appreciated that. And it had character development and things like that, but just High Guardian Spice doesn't even come close. But I was thinking we could start by talking kind of about anything that we liked about this show, because I wouldn't give this a 1. It was not the worst thing, no redeeming qualities about it or anything, but
yeah. What did I like about this show? Honestly, I didn't go in thinking I need to write down things I like. I remember I literally just finished watching it. You binged it over 3 days? The first episode one day, and then 5 the next, and then the final 6.
Nick the Madman watched 11 episodes back to back before we started recording this.
I started playing League of Legends to take a break from this show. That's a bad sign when I have to use League of Legends as a refreshing break. Anyways, there was one thing I remember. I only have one good thing written down, and that is from episode 11 when they're fighting this sea dragon thing. I did not expect them to use one of the characters, Sages, the wizard of the group. I did not expect them to use her inexperience and have consequences from that. So honestly, I had big respect where her just inexperience just killed something they were trying to capture.
I did appreciate that too, but there's another point I want to go into with that I actually didn't like about that overall, with just the tonal shift there, but generally... Sorry, what?
I was going to say the tonal shift at the end of every single episode, because they consistently try semi-consistently ended episodes pretty darkly or with a certain tone, only for the music to start up it was
we're being positive.
I'm sorry, no, it was funny. They didn't mean it to be funny, but it was. So I'll give that's kind of a plus.
Generally there were a couple things. I think the color palette of this show consistently is pretty nice. It's not my favorite, but it's pretty good. Generally, I would say. Like, I think the colors are nice. Everything pops. It looks nice to look at, like in still frames. And then there were like a couple jokes that I laughed at. That was about it.
There was only like one joke that I laughed at, but we'll get to that one.
I thought I wrote something else here, because I took notes on like things that I found good. Turns out, nope, that's it. Straight up.
We need to have a whole section about episode 7, though.
Oh, jeez.
I want to talk about that one, but we'll get to that one in time.
Generally, I think this show's problems, on a very base level, not even considering writing or anything. One of the biggest things I noticed was just production was all over the place. And I'm not someone who dislikes shows if they're not, like, beautiful every single second. I'm not like that. But there were some things that I thought were pretty inexcusable, even for just, like, a 12-episode kind of amateur project, where it's, like, half the lines, like, it was consistent enough where it's, like, they would say something, but the lips wouldn't match the audio. Like, just, they would be desynced or something. It would happen, like, 5 times per episode, at the very least, if not more than that. And so it's, like, that was really jarring, trying to watch the show, just because it just took me out of it. It's not something you notice, like, in other languages, but it's natively in English, so it was, like, how was that hard to get right? And then there's also, like, weird frame rate desync issues where it's like something would be animated on like 30 frames a second and then something else would be animated on 15 frames a second, and it just looked really clunky, like in a lot of spots like that.
There are some times that they use animation just tools just once or something. Like, I noticed one time they just used parallax scrolling. It was the episode that they introduced the one insufferable guy who was like, oh, it's me, I'm so great, and then he wasn't. But
Aster?
When they, Aster.
Yeah.
When they introduced him and they did a sweeping shot to her sitting there, they did parallax scrolling in the background so that the background moved much faster. And then I had to go and rewatch that because I thought my screen froze or something, or that they just didn't animate something. And I'm like, oh no, that's just parallax scrolling.
That one I didn't.
And then they never used it again. Not that I noticed.
Yeah,
I also had to pull out my phone at some points and just started playing a gacha on my phone. Not gonna lie, I had to cope somehow, but it wasn't for long stretches.
I watched everything pretty much full intent, so I was catching a lot of those like animation errors because it was just like I wanted to make sure I was taking in everything as much as I could. That was a really weirdly consistent problem. That wouldn't be something that I would hate a show over, but it would be remiss for me to not mention that because it's such like an integral part of the show is like those animation errors. Yeah, I feel like I wouldn't be talking about the show if I like didn't at least mention that.
Yeah, I just didn't come in thinking about animation really. When I came in hearing that it was a terrible show, I think I specialize more in writing than in animation and character arcs, themes.
Right. I want to talk about that more, but I wanted to mention that because it, like, I can't describe how bad it was at times. That, like, I've never seen production values. Like, it wasn't, really bad CGI bad or anything, but it was pretty low. And then in general, I think the show has a lot of problems with, like, explaining anything about its core world. At all?
Yeah, that's something I want to get into when we get into specific problems when it comes to writing.
Yeah, it was like generally anything about the world as soon like we would get more details about it 3 episodes after they started talking about the terms casually, and that was just a general problem too where I had no idea what was going on half the time. It was like you would go in and they'd be like, oh, it's the city, Raccoon City. And you're like, what's Raccoon City? And then 5 episodes later, they're like, "Oh, I'm from Raccoon City. It has these people here. Here's what's that about that." And then like you kind of got what they were getting at, but it was so late into the show, past where it had been like you should be scared of this name of something. It's like it doesn't work like that because you're just doing it backwards, and there's no impact to that in the story.
Well, yeah, that's actually how they that's how they ruined their final twist at the end of the credits of the show. I don't know if you caught this, but they just straight up ruined that in a casual conversation between the two villains.
What happened in the very end with that? Because I didn't catch it.
At the very end, like at post credits, what happens is it turns out that Rosemary, the main fighter protagonist that we follow, like the main protagonist,
Pink
her
hair.
mom is evil. She's she's evil. Big twist.
Right.
But there is a conversation. I have it written down somewhere. I just wrote down, holy shit, they just casually revealed the twist that Rose's mom is in which country, like it's no big deal.
Oh yeah, where they're just like
they're just sitting there talking, and it's like, oh, you mean what's her mom's name?
Lavender.
You're like, oh, Lavender's daughter? You mean the one in which country? It's just like, yeah, that one.
Oh, that's another thing
like,
that bothers me, is that they're named after spices, but it has like no impact on the world, the character design, or anything.
It's just kind of so random quirky.
Like,
I mean, it's a theme.
Rosemary,
it has no purpose.
I don't think like her colors match the spice. Same with like sage, things like that. Some of them coincidentally do a little bit, but it's just like
that is pure coincidence. I
most
think.
Spices are green or brown, and it's a very colorful show, so it was fine or whatever. And then some characters just
green hair or brown hair. What do you choose?
Yeah, that's pretty much just a consistent thing.
The dad with purple hair looks so dumb. It was really funny.
I actually like the guy with the pink beard. It looked pretty good, I think. Straight up.
Funny.
I'm not messing. Straight up, it looked good. You'd fight me on that one. It looked fun.
All right, I guess we're at an impasse. All right. Do we want to start on some of our general problems we had with the show?
Oh, that's what I was going into already.
Oh, okay.
Do you have any more like general problems?
Oh, yeah, I didn't realize that's what we were doing.
Sorry, I just kind of transitioned into that.
How dare you not have a hard transition? How dare you casually segue into this section? Okay, so one of my problems is you're not allowed to catch your breath. I think this was something definitely more in the first half of the show, where these lines were delivered so fast, and after like someone delivers their line, there's no downtime between the next line. It'll be like someone will say something, to the point that this ruined a lot of delivery of some of the jokes. Where it's like, when you tell a joke, sometimes you want to have some like downtime for it to simmer, and then you say the punchline. They would just say setup, say punchline, and then someone else would speak.
That's interesting too, because I think there was also the opposite problem with some jokes, where in the first episode there's one where she's like, "Oh, I wonder if the animal has rabies. Come on!" And then the other girl would be like, "Do you want rabies?" It's like that joke could have been 2 seconds and it was 12.
There was one joke where Time was like standing at the doorway of something, and someone says something. Time walks into the doorway, stands there so awkwardly long that whatever she said became funny just because of how awkward it was.
And then Time's like the archer lady, right? We should probably
the
introduce everyone, because Rosemary's like the pink-haired one. Sage is the bluish-purple-haired one. Is it blue or purple?
Mage.
The mage one.
It's blue.
Okay.
I always forget you're
Cool.
colorblind. It's blue. The Rosemary's like the fighter of the group.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to be describing them if I forget their name by class more than by hair color.
Parsley is like the yellow-haired barbarian lady.
Barbarian dwarf smith.
Dwarf, yeah. And Time is like the archer elven lady
Ranger.
with like red hair. That's like, those are the ones on the poster that we'll probably use the name of a lot, I imagine. As well as there's one kid that's like red hair also, but like really white
um,
is Snapdragon.
Snapdragon?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a few things to say about Snapdragon.
And then Amaryllis has like dark purple hair and is like a mage with like a white hat and like a little
With
wand.
a big ass axe for some reason, but I mean that's Cinema Sins moment right there.
Cinema Sins moment. Yeah, those are like the main 6 characters in this show. There's also some other minor ones that we'd probably get into, but I just wanted to, because I imagine most people haven't seen this show and have no idea what their names are. That's generally like the main 6 characters.
Yeah. Which the other 2 like side-ish characters, they definitely ramp up in like importance and screen time over time.
Mm-hmm.
There's also Olive, the like one of the main antagonists for like the entire second half.
Yeah, and she's
a cat girl.
Yeah.
Cat
I think
girl
that's
mage.
it. Everyone else is kind of pretty incidental, and I think we can talk about it when we get there, but everyone else is pretty like integral to the overarching story, so.
Yeah. Another complaint I had was that everyone has to be quippy.
Oh, like Marvel superhero style?
Yeah, where we have these 3 like headmistresses in particular is what I was thinking of. And they want them to be like a Dumbledore kind of figure. I'm going to be referencing Harry Potter a bit because that's my closest frame of reference. Given that it's a magic school, it's kind of the default that people will compare it to Harry Potter. But it's so hard to take these figures of absolute authority seriously when they won't shut the fuck up and stop telling jokes.
I actually did kind of like it. So they kind of reveal that it's because it's like 3 ladies that it looks like the same person, like through different ages, and I kind of like that as a concept.
Oh, really? If that was what they were going for, that completely went over my head.
No idea if they were going for it, but if that's what they were going for, I liked it how they all looked like the same person, like through different ages, and it was like the Muses of Fate or whatever, like in Hercules or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that would have been cool if that all didn't go over my head.
It'd be cool if like they made any more explicit. Yeah. I did like the old one because she was just like, "Oh, Doyle, oh, you kids suck," and like it got really annoying later on. But like in episode 2, I was like, "Oh, that's kind of funny." I kind of liked her.
Yeah. Well, I would have liked them if everyone wasn't quippy. If it was like we had some serious teachers and then they were there to lighten the mood, then that would be refreshing. But with everyone having to make quips, it's just another person making quips. And it's like, oh, okay. So no one was serious. So it was hard to progress a plot with no serious like teachers.
They were interesting. They were introduced first, so I was hoping that it was like, because 2 of them were serious and the third one, like the old lady, was the one that was like doing the quip stuff. But then it's like we meet all the other main teachers and they're all kind of snarky like that. At least a little bit.
I'd say Cawthorn is the only serious one. And I feel
is that
like
one that's like the goat guy?
No, Cawthorn was the trans teacher.
No, that's Caraway.
Is that Caraway?
Yeah.
Who's Cawthorn?
I have no idea who you're talking about.
Is that like a Cawthorn?
Oh, you looked that up.
They're a Republican representative. That's not who I'm thinking of.
Yeah, he was in the school actually. He funded so much of the show they had to put him in as a character.
That's one of the themes I want to talk about actually, is like traditionalism and heritage.
They did talk about that. I was gonna say before we moved on, is like I don't mind there not being a plot, because in something, again, you don't know really all that reference, but like Steven Universe, straight up, like 70% of it is not at all plot relevant, and a lot of people hate those episodes. It's like I want the plot to go, but I think because Rebecca Sugar, who writes the show, like does, I mean, there's also other writers, but they do a really good job at like character interactions and characterization comparatively to this, for sure. I don't know if it's like my favorite way to write characters, but generally, like, she writes problems in kind of like a human, down-to-earth way, and just like I feel invested in the people, right?
Yeah.
You can't have that, but also like everyone's snarky and like millennial random all the time. Because that's another thing with the jokes, is like the jokes aren't just quirky. It's like avocado toast millennial like random jokes. I don't know how to describe it, but that was like the brand. I don't know if you got that feeling or not.
No.
It reminded me very specifically of like millennials trying to be hip, like really like the old ones that are like in their mid-30s.
Yeah, oh, okay. When you put it like that, yeah.
Where they just like lol bacon narwhal.
I didn't get that feeling particularly too much. It just felt like shitty jokes. It didn't feel like also random jokes to me.
There were just some of them, like rabies, where she's like, dude, I bet that animal has rabies. I want it to bite me. It's like...
Yeah, that was pretty random.
It's like those
that was
of
more
jokes.
like quirky.
Yeah, those were the vibes I was getting from like most of the show. And if you like that humor, fine. But it just... it felt really just soulless and unfunny a lot of the time. Just like, we got to make our characters quirky so you like them, but not in a way that feels real. Just
yeah, totally
quirky, ironically, in the most mainstream way quirky can be. Was a lot of my issues with that. And then like the magical systems as they describe them, I just have no idea what's going on like 90% of the time.
I have some things to say, but I wanted to talk about the traditionalism thing.
Oh, right.
Where they talked about... So a big part of Rosemary's journey is they... who was it? Caraway,
yeah.
Caraway. Straight up just is like, your mom did this, so you should follow in your mom's footsteps. It's tradition. It's what your family has done. You should follow what your family has done. Meanwhile, every single other character's theme is do not follow tradition if it doesn't work for you. Whereas no one really knows. I guess they do kind of know what they want to do. But how they do it is really what is being explored here. But it's so weird just being like, it feels like it's in complete dissonance where Rosemary, one of our, like, the poster child, is being told, follow your mother's heritage, and every other character has a problem with their heritage and is told to just do not follow heritage and explore your own, like, path.
You're right. It's literally every single character, because it's like Sage the mage is talking about, like, there's like a whole thing about old versus new magic that I want to get into later, but then like also Parsley the dwarf is like,
doesn't want to run the shop.
She doesn't want to run the shop at home. Yeah. And then Time is like the archer. She wants to help the woods, which is kind of like traditionalism, but it's like she's lost her way with like her family, and it's like repairing that and finding her own way. So
it's being a lot more hot-headed than her family. They were much more passive, especially the mother. We don't hear a ton about the father. She definitely wants to be more like her father, whereas he's kind of like the go-getter. He stayed behind in this corrupted realm of magic, and she wants to come back and fix it, whereas that corruption, what do they call it? I don't even know.
But yeah, it's about finding your own path, and it's like Rosemary, the main character, doesn't know what she wants to do. So the professor, like headmaster, is just like, well, I knew your mom, which they dropped like a bombshell out of nowhere, by the way. They're just like, I knew your mom growing up. Also, you should do exactly what she does. Because I think that would be cool.
Don't break from tradition.
Which, if she was fine with it and wanted to, like, because I could see that, like, Rosemary might want to go that way already, but it's like, why?
Also, in that very same episode, I just want to drop this before I forget it. There's a really funny moment where he's, like, giving this serious speech to her, and he pauses, just, like, looks at her and says, your mom, and then just like stops to think, and it's just really funny to see him just say your mom, and I want to cut that out of context. So I'll find the section and I will send it to you by the end of the night.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep this very minimal editing. I just wanted to render audio with like a couple of supporting pictures, maybe, if we talk about it. I'm probably the idea is that you can like tab out for this or whatever and just kind of listen to like however long we go, because I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface of, like, a lot of this. It's been kind of disorganized, but it's really fascinating. Like, this show, for as much as I don't like it, it's really fascinating. Like, in a lot of the ways that, like, it doesn't feel right. I feel like we should go like episodic because that would be the easiest way to like, because you can do overarching a little bit. If you have any more, we can do
I have
that.
one more for that, and this is another comparison to Harry Potter. So in almost every Harry Potter movie, the characters would learn new spells that would become useful in the conflict in the later half of like every movie. Like Wingardium Leviosa, they learn that in the first half where it's like, okay, they're students, they're learning things, and then that comes into use in the second half. Whereas in High Guardian Spice, the episodes of them going to class are just to show that they are learning something, just that they are knowledgeable, so that when they pull something out of their ass later, it's like, oh, they're knowledgeable, that's something a knowledgeable person
It must have
would know.
happened off screen or something. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
and-
they must have learned it.
Yeah, and we just don't know what tools we have at any given time, whereas in Harry Potter, we're just like, oh, I generally know what tools he has. I've seen him learn them all.
Ooh, Avada Kedavra. Oh, they're dead. Yeah.
Leviosa.
That's dark magic, I think, so he wouldn't use that, but a lot of it's weird because this show is pretty episodic generally, so it's kind of hard to talk about overarching things, but
Yeah, I think we should move to like talk about per episode.
Yeah.
I actually didn't take notes for episodes 1, but I kind of remember my main complaint with episode 1 was every single conversation felt utilitarian, and that every single conversation had a purpose to establish a fact or something about the world, where it's like,
Yeah.
I am from Pebble. I am now leaving to school.
it
Stuff like that. And then establishing
Yeah.
shots of the environment to show off kind of the world, which felt pretty generic fantasy.
Also, I think every single line delivery in this is by far so much worse than every other line delivery in the entire show. I don't know why it's so much worse.
It
so
feels like
weird.
a warm-up practice.
It feels like, yeah, they recorded this one like really early into production, and then every other episode as they went, like this was some sort of trial episode, like to get pitched somewhere, right? And they just didn't re-record anything. So like the writing feels stilted, the dialogue in particular. Like if every other episode was a 3, this is like a -6. It was really fucking bad.
Yeah, it was awful.
Like I'm not a stickler for acting that much either, but it was probably the worst acting I've ever heard in anything. And the actors get way better later. I just wanted to mention, like, if you ever watch this show to know what we're talking about, know that episode 1 is like almost an anomaly in terms of how bad the acting is. It gets better. I don't think it ever gets really good, but it gets better.
You had to actually convince me to continue watching after the first episode.
Yeah, Nick was like, it's so bad I can't. And then I had to be like, no, trust me, it's just really bad comparatively for some reason. Like overall, I would give this show like a 2.5. That episode was literally a -6 or something. Like it's not
so bad.
real. It can't even be on the scale. It's not a real like piece of media.
Nothing really happens that episode either, except we just get to see like some of the characters, like the 4 main characters, and then the episode ends with them walking up to the school, which they are like, whoa, it looks so cool. It's just a regular ass pink building.
By the way that it was structured, it reminded me of like the Kill la Kill Academy. It's not important at all. Oh shit. My computer went out.
God damn it.
Oh no, it went asleep. It just like, I don't know why, but it reminded me of the Kill la Kill Academy. I thought that was
It's
really
missing
funny.
the big pillar in the middle. Like, you know, the big pillar that Satsuki stood on?
Yeah.
In the
It was just like a city on a hill.
Oh, you mean the city? Yeah. Was there anything else you had to say about episode 1? Because I didn't take notes on that, and I honestly don't remember too much.
A lot of the characters, for like writing purposes, the jokes were we're annoying, and I don't know why. Like,
I thought that was the character.
it was mostly, well, she gets better. She gets better as time goes on, but Rosemary.
Ooh, Rosemary?
Yeah.
No.
Rosemary, she got better. She's not as bad as she was in episode 1. After having distance days from it, it was so bad. Where she would just be like, let's cut the line. Yeah! We're being delinquents. Yeah! And so it's like, yeah, okay, cool, whatever.
Oh, I forgot about that.
It just was so painfully not. Oh, Yeah, here was one of the random jokes because I wrote it down. Was their parents, or like their guardians or whatever, which is like a lesbian couple. The one that's like in the kitchen is like, "Do you girls want any food?" And then she goes, "Is sleep a food?" It's like,
Oh, that's on par with like
Oh.
lunch is my favorite subject.
it was just that one in particular. I did really like the gay couple rep there a lot. Like, they don't ever like look at the camera and like, we are gay. They just are. And like,
They do that once in the show though. Not for like a gay couple, but
yeah, like
it was honestly kind of jarring the one time they did it.
their names are Aloe and something else. I don't remember the other one, but it's like their aunt, cousins, whatever, that they're just living with in the city, where this academy is.
They're Sage's cousins, which for some reason Rosemary calls their aunt.
And she's like, "Oh, that's so embarrassing." Whatever. It's like a weird joke, but basically they're married. They just do like couple things. They look lovingly into each other's eyes. They kiss or whatever. It's just like, it's very clearly they're married and whatever, but it's not like they turn to the audience and it's like, "Well, when a girl and a girl love each other very much," like the show does a lot with other stuff, but this was just like, they made it very explicitly clear they were a couple, but didn't like explain it to you like you were three, which I liked. It was very good.
Yeah.
That's how I think that kind of rep should be done.
It just feels like in the world it's just natural, which is how that representation needs to be
and
done.
it is.
Just make it natural and it's just normal. You don't need to make it flashy. Just have it there and be like, yes, this is normal.
Like
they are happy, they are fine. Like everything is. There's nothing wrong with this. They are just like you and me.
Mm-hmm. The two ways I think to do it are either like that, or to have an entire arc centered around like exploring the ideas and like getting your audience comfortable with homosexuality. If you're like trying to go that route of like, there are people who are going to be not comfortable with that, like we need to make an arc where it's like we humanize them and make it normal to them. But this show is just assuming that you are a good person and think that's fine. It's like, love is love.
Until we get to the Snapdragon arc, really.
Well, that's way later, but yeah.
Not to say the show is lacking that. We do have an arc about that. It's not handled great, but it is here.
Yeah, I think just the fact that they weren't like making it a big deal, they didn't have a character that's like, whoa, but girls can't date girls. They were just like, it's normal and it's perfect. Leave it like that. Great representation. Like, that's all I had to say about that. There's a couple other things that I had written down. For some reason, in the first episode, Rosemary dreams, and her dream is her backstory, where she just dreams it's like, "Hey mom, why do you want to be a High Guardian Knight?" She's like, "Well, it's cool."
That's like what I mean when I said this episode was utilitarian.
They literally had a dream sequence that was just exposition flashback.
We had to get as much utility out of every single like scene from this episode.
Yeah. It just... Oh, the other thing was like the other lol random moment was her locket was like, "Oh, you have a locket with a picture of cheesecake in it? It's iconic." And like they talked about it like it was a joke. It became a thing later on and it had an emotional moment, which I liked. But like, it was just such a not joke.
I didn't like that emotional moment because she said it as some joke, and then she got mad later when she was like, "It's not just some cheesecake." And it's like, don't tell me you have a locket of cheesecake and then get mad when I say it's just a locket of cheesecake.
So yeah, a lot of the jokes, they were really painfully flat. Like the other ones are like less funny generally. But this one just felt very much like we have to dump, like, it wasn't even like utilitarian in the sense of the dialogue like telling you about the world. It was just utilitarian and like just, hey, here's what our characters are like, here's their situation, like very present stuff that like can just be established visually.
Yeah, and that's the start of a recurring problem of people, both the wrong people getting upset and for the wrong reasons. Or like, something will happen, and the person who should be upset the most is the one comforting someone that shouldn't be nearly as upset.
Also, the other thing that bothered me, because I just remembered it, this is the very last thing, they spent like 4 minutes on like an animal mating ritual process that they were observing.
Way too long.
Way too long.
Way too long.
Irrelevant to literally everything that comes after it. It's just like...
We never see that type of animal
again.
The
animal never even comes back. It's not even relevant in that respect. It's just, that's it. It's just, wow, look at that. And then they tie it into being like, well, that means you help some creatures out for loving. That means you are a high guardian or something. But if you wanted a scene like that, you could have had a 15-second thing where she does something charitable, like give someone back a stolen purse or whatever, something like that, versus like, let's watch 5 minutes of this intensely like descriptive mating dance cycle. It's not like explicit like porn or something, but it's just like, you know, how birds do like mating dances and calls, and it's just, they have this whole elaborate thing that they design that just, it's really poorly utilized show space is what bothers me about it.
Yeah.
But that was it on episode 1. It gets better after that. A little bit. It's not great, but
a little bit.
It gets a little bit better.
Not a good show. Not a good show. All right, so episode 2. What do you got for this?
Similar stuff. Like, nothing really happened. We just kind of learned. Like, I have... This is by far the shortest episode for notes I have.
Yeah. Not my shortest, but... What even happened in this episode again?
People got schedules, and we went around and met all the teachers, basically, is what happened.
Oh, yes. So, at the beginning of the episode, the headmistresses were introduced to them at that point. They say to figure out what your vows are.
That's right.
And they make so many jokes about it that it made me think, what is the point of the vows? Because they literally encourage them just to be like, you can just yell whatever. Like, one of the headmistresses is just like, yell whatever. And that makes it sound like there's no consequences to what they say. But the Rosemary gets so bogged down by not knowing what to say when we've been told, don't worry about it.
I think the point of it was, like, make sure it's something from your own heart and that it doesn't matter, as, like, don't think about it too much. And it was supposed to be, like, she's worrying about it because she cares about it and wants to get it right. But there is no right. It could have been done better, but I think that was the point. Was because I agree with you that it was a little bit, like, that scene went on way too long, when it could have just been like, if you left it mysterious, you get the same result of like, yeah, just say something into the well. Just have your vows done by the supper.
Just be like, say, like, make them say something into the well then and there, so that's more from the heart, more impromptu.
Even that is better, yeah.
Like, this is what I believe. Yeah, that would be better, because then we don't have to have this overarching, where it's like, they kind of stop thinking about it, honestly, and then eventually just say something at the end of the episode.
Mm-hmm. I do like how we reveal the vows a little bit. Nothing ever comes of what they say, nor is much of it interesting or says much about their characters, but that concept of that happening could be interesting if the show was written better.
I'd say the closest is that Time is saying she wants to be independent, but we kind of already surmised that from her actions and personality.
Standoffish character. She is the best, by the way.
Yeah, because she talks the least.
I actually do like her character a lot, where she's just kind of like cool, and like if someone's annoying her, maybe it's because I just hate every other character and she acts like she kind of hates every other character.
That's why I liked the one bully character, because she just told them to shut up.
Yeah, nothing much happens. They just kind of get their schedules, and like we get introduced to all the teachers. And then
there's one thing I wanted to say about like them getting their schedules is they try to make this really big emotional impact by the fact that they just sometimes don't have class together. Mm-hmm. They try to make it such a big deal that these two characters won't spend time together for a short amount of time, a small portion of the day. And it's like they're about to break down into tears because of it. And it's not that big a deal.
Yeah, it's like that just that emotional moment. They didn't really sell. They sold they were pretty close or whatever, but it just doesn't feel like it earns that big of a moment. And then the only other thing that I remember from this episode, uh, there's a little moment where Rosemary's passing a note to like one of the kind of bully characters, Snapdragon, and he just smiles, crumbles it up, and throws it in her face. It was great.
I mean, from then on, Snapdragon isn't even a bully, so that wasn't even indicative of his character.
No, it was just great. It was a good moment anyways.
Because he was supposed to be more a lackey who was more, like, reluctant to follow the actual bully.
Mm-hmm.
But no, just... Yeah. Also, I like how Sage is just day one, I give up. She gets bullied a little bit, I give up. It's
done.
like, you have to fight literal monsters. If a little bullying on the first day of school is too much for you. People were poisoned, and they weren't quitting.
I liked just that it was like a character thing of, like, do I fit in? And I think it's an important moment. I disagree with you in that it was bad, but I do agree it was a little annoying. Speaking of the poisoning thing, though, that teacher sucks and is the worst. Because she's just...
Yeah, there's a teacher who literally poisons all of the students. Like, everyone has a cup of tea and they all drink it, except for Sage, who the bully spills the tea on her dress and goes, whoopsie.
Oopsie!
And so she doesn't have poison to drink. But so she's the one who makes the poison, and the bully's reluctant to take it.
Yeah, the antidote to it.
Not more poison.
Hey, it's an antidote. Oops. Oopsie. But that's...
Just spills the antidote on her dress instead. Like, oopsie.
And she just...
Not fun,
dies.
is it?
The teacher was so bad because she's like, ooh, it's poison. You have an hour to make a potion or else you die. First day of class. This is how we weed out the whatever students. It's just... She's supposed to be quirky and fun, but that was not sold at all for me with this teacher. She has, like, gray hair, and she's, like, the old potion teacher. It just... And, like, the potions of being death, it just, like, turns their heads into, like... They get fins, or, like, quirky things, where it's, like, that's not a death potion. They're not on the ground, like, gasping for air. They're just, like...
Well, there was one point where it sounded like the bully's neck almost snapped, and I'm like, that one seemed a little rough.
But it was just...
But then she just grew a horn or something.
Yeah, unicorn horn. It's just... The tone was not... Like, they meant for, like, the... If you drink the tea, you're gonna die in an hour to be, like, a joke, but it just... Don't say you're gonna die in an hour. Just be like, these effects are permanent in an hour, and you keep your horn. Then you keep, like, the tone consistent, and it was just, like, a really weird tonal moment for that. I don't know why they went with that.
Yeah.
That's nothing
I
happened in
think
that
that's all we
episode.
have to say for episode 2. Yeah, not a whole lot.
I said what I felt like I said a ton, but really nothing really happened except for a ton of introductions. I do like how the ethics professor is a literal succubus, though. That's really funny.
Yeah. No, the ethics professor is Caraway.
No, the ethics professor is the red demon lady.
That's the magic.
Yeah.
Magic writing or language.
And so it's just like, oh, the horny succubus is the one teaching about morals. That's kind of funny.
And then we see her like one more time throughout the rest of the show.
Yeah, I don't know why they like didn't use the character at all. It was weird.
I mean, honestly, it probably would have just been another awful character.
Yeah, I mean, most of them are though. Like, but at least, I don't know. It's again like, why would you introduce this character and then not use her? Unless she's planning to be like a big thing in season 2 or something.
I don't know why they didn't use the ethics class more to like explain some of the moral themes of the show. That is an excuse to explain your themes. That makes sense.
About like what it means to be like a guardian or whatever. Yeah, it's like
yeah. Well, like kind of. I'm actually reading a manga right now called. I think it's something like It Is Now Time to Begin Ethics. Mm-hmm. Where basically this one teacher, ethics teacher, kind of like teaches some ethics class. Usually the student isn't paying attention, but then that teacher has to intervene in their life in some way because they're in trouble or facing something. And so he has to then, it's, always coincidentally the lesson he was just teaching, but then he teaches it to them in a way that they will understand. Mm-hmm. Great way to like introduce some philosophy and ethics and then have a problem it's applicable to, an everyday problem like bullying or group mentality when it comes to like a group messaging. At one point they had something about that.
This felt like
But
a
yeah,
show that needed to take its
underutilized
content and
tool.
spread it across 2 seasons, honestly, if they're going to go that route.
What, this show?
Yeah, of like having ethics and stuff. It's like that should be the first, like 2/3 of your first season, I think, is teaching your kids like the fundamentals of like ethics, and it's not as fun. But that's like your basic class, and then you get into your combat classes and whatever. It's like they just didn't do anything with it.
Agreed.
That's basically it. Episode 3.
Yeah.
Why is there
My
a
first
furry
note
Tony
for
the Tiger?
episode-
Sorry.
My first note for episode 3 is just quote unquote your mom, because this is the episode where Caraway is just like pauses, says your mom. So glad we got back around to that one. The very first thing that when Rosemary accidentally makes this cat into a giant cat monster, the very first thing that it says is, "I have some opinions," which I thought would just evolve it into saying some rather unfavorable opinions. I thought they were setting up some joke, and honestly, that might just be not the best
Just
idea.
to clarify, by the way, on the cat, it is like an 8-foot tall, buff Tony the Tiger, furry-looking cat in this show, and that caught me so off guard.
I thought it was just so funny. The very first thing it says is, "I have some opinions," but then it just doesn't share its opinion. It was really funny.
I like him in later episodes, but it was just a weird, like, I just didn't care about him. And, like, that whole plot line felt like it was all over the place. I don't have as many notes for this episode.
It felt like it was to establish, like, they needed some excuse to establish how this could happen later when it was actually important.
Yeah.
And it also helped establish the corruption that was happening to the tree, which is Time's whole character motivation.
That was good.
Is to find some way to alleviate this corruption that is happening to nature.
We could tell it was bad and that it was doing something, but they also just really randomly name dropped. They're like, "Oh, the rot." I'm like, what the fuck is the rot?
That's what it's called,
because it was called the rot, and I saw it, but it was like just at the end of the episode, they're just like, "Oh, ew, the rot, it's bad," and then they just end the episode after showing like a close up. This is
also the episode that we were just saying how we liked how they did this, like the lesbian cousins, how they did that so well.
They aren't each other's cousins.
Whereas,
they're just the lesbians and also the cousins of Sage.
They're cousins of Sage, and they are lesbians. I'm sorry. I should have said word.
It's not in Alabama wizard school.
But this is also the episode where we learn that Caraway is transgender. Female to male.
I think before we go into this, we need to clarify, both of us very supportive of trans rights, LGBT rights. I wanted this to be written very well because I think this is an important subject to write on. That's all I wanted to say before you go into this.
And I also agree. We both agree on that trans rights, and yeah.
Professor Caraway's a he. All that, like, respecting gender.
We were saying...
Yeah.
So what I was saying is that it's so weird that in such an LGBTQ-friendly world, Rose just isn't aware of the concept. Whereas, like, we just were talking about how, like, diverse people are normal. Why is this so diverse? And... why is this so different? Why is this so strange to her? Why can't she wrap her head around this concept?
Yeah, it definitely felt like it was written just to, like, explain transgenderism to the audience, which, like, so the scene starts out where they're just like, Professor Caraway says, he's like, "Oh, look at this book that I have. I used to know your mom." And then they get into this scene where Rosemary says, "You used to be a girl?" And then Caraway is like,
he looks at camera practically. He says, well, I am transgender.
And then Rose goes, "Oh, I've never heard of that word." And then they explain the concept of transgenderism, which it would be very fitting for a kids show, but this is rated TV-14 and the kids say fuck. So it's not that audience.
That's something I want to bring up. Who is this show for? What do I have some notes for that. There's
nothing wrong with... My chair is squeaking so bad. I'm have to cut all that out.
No, but the language here is obviously not for children. And, like, maybe shows like Adventure Time and Regular Show will say shit and bastard, but I'm not aware
Adventure
of it.
Time never said it. Steven Universe never said it. Regular Show said what the H in the first episode and then never again. So it's pushing past those. Ruby says, like, shit once a volume, but I don't consider Ruby a kid's show either.
Yeah, but on the other hand, the themes, tones, and characters all feel like they are written for, like, a show aimed at children.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the blood.
Apart from the blood, yeah. Like, the blood, it's not even that violent, but it's, like, for what seems to be something that should be, like, a PG-rated show. It goes a little far.
It's excessive.
But it's not in, like, a Madoka Magica way, where it's, you know, like, that's the whole point, is the contrast. It just feels kind of weird. Because you can do that well. Like, shows that are, like, trickingly or, you know, connivingly innocent on the surface turn, like, dark, like, in the actual show. That's a thing you can do, but this show doesn't do that. It just has a flip-flopping tone.
It just feels like if it was written for a more mature audience, that they would at least attempt more nuance, whereas they didn't even, like, try. They wrote, like, a kid's show bad with not kid stuff in it.
And that,
like, they didn't try much nuance at all. They tried to handle mature topics, but still without nuance.
They needed to write in for a later arc that this Professor Caraway, he was transgender, but...
I have something about that, actually, where I wrote down that, where is it? In episode 11, when Snapdragon says that he wants, when he starts to learn that he, that maybe he's, or that he wants to transition, the whole trans discussion would have felt much more satisfying if in... episode 3, it was more alluded to. Like, if we saw the photo of the professor as a girl, and then we recognize now he associates as a guy, then being, like, as the viewer, if we get to put it together, we get the satisfaction of putting 2 and 2 together, even if it's not that, like, even if it is heavily implied.
Yeah, and then it's like
but they just had to, like, look at camera and say it, and so it's like this whole conversation is Snapdragon being like, you don't know what it's like to not, like, to want to be the other gender or a different gender, and the whole time we are just sitting here knowing that he's gonna say, well, actually, and so we just sit here just waiting for Snapdragon to shut up and for it to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's value in that. I thought it was really weird in episode 3 how they were like, oh, I take this potion once a month. And I'm like, that's such a specific that you don't have to go into. But it was for the later payoff. But you could also move all of that to episode 11 and it'd be way better. Because then it's like, here's a solution to this problem. If you want to try it out, here's what I do. And you get more into the reveal there. I wish the reveal had been, like, way less, like, look at the camera in this episode. Because I think the makings for a good arc are there, but they dropped so much so early and in a way that felt like they were looking at the camera and just saying, guys, look, we have a transgender character. This is so cool. It's awesome, right? Where, yeah, it is awesome, but, like, you gotta... if you want to use it later in arc, you should probably build up to it better and not feel like...
I don't care who your character is, write them well.
Exactly. That was the point of that. I think that's it on that episode. That was like the big thing.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And then they also moved up, like, some characters around in some classes or something like that. That was either in episode 2 or 3. I don't know if you had anything to say about that, but...
No,
yeah.
Not really.
Just plot stuff of, like, oh, you're good at this thing. Episode 4...
is that when they leave the school and that's when Time goes to Parsley's house?
Yeah, in episode 4.
And the very first note that I have written is, "Dear God, the children."
Oh, I peeked the mic. No!
So we just go to Parsley's house. And for reference, Parsley has like 14 brothers. And they are all loud.
Hi, I'm a brother.
They're all like that. Yeah.
It's not even intelligible at times. It's just a wave of noise.
I like it because I don't think it overstays its welcome, because it's the only episode that we see them pretty much. But it's funny that all her brothers are like just clones of each other and just very much slightly shorter than her because they're all dwarves.
Yeah. Oh, there was one last thing that is both episodes 3, 4, and 5, honestly. Sage has this arc about old magic versus new magic. Her mother always is like big old magic. She doesn't like that newfound magic thing, which is, again, about the whole traditional thing.
Oh,
But
right, this part.
in episode 3, we finish episode 3 with her coming to terms and saying, I need to learn all of the tools of magic, old magic and new magic. And then the very next episode, the cousins give her a staff, and she is so torn about it because she is like, I don't want to use new magic. Where at the very last bit of the last episode, the previous episode, she was like, I gotta use new magic to kind of become a more versatile mage. Now she just doesn't want to use it.
I get what they might be going for is like a regression of like second guessing, but they don't really show that really well. They don't have her like go back and forth. It's just kind of like, I don't want it.
Yeah, she doesn't want to until she finds the prettiest staff.
By the way,
Which
I realized they're called Terra spheres, and it's because like earth magic.
oh,
I don't know if that's gonna
I
come up
didn't
or
even
not.
bother thinking about it.
Well, I just thought about it now. It ties into like other stuff later, I guess, and I'll give it that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were you gonna say?
I guess we should establish the difference between old magic and new magic.
They didn't for like 8 episodes.
Yeah, that's why I'm establishing it now. So old magic is this way of conjuring magic from like yourself and the earth, and so what it'll do is it will tire you out. Whereas new magic, you just like get a terra sphere, which is like a wand or a staff or something, and you can just zap it.
Yeah.
And I think old magic required runes too.
Yeah, old magic reminded me of like book magic versus Harry Potter magic, like, book smarts versus street smarts, where it's like, imagine Harry Potter, but you didn't have to say the name of the spell and just like blasted. That's it. Just think of the thing you want to do.
And in one of the episodes, we see one of the professors when she's lecturing. I think it's the very next episode. That there is no downside to new magic, and then her wand runs out of energy, where it's like, oh, so like terra spheres can run out of energy, and that never happens to anyone at any chance
Ever again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Feels like a
Just for the
Chekhov's
one
gun
that's,
that just doesn't go off.
Yeah.
Yeah, with like new magic and old magic, it felt like the entire point of it was like its heritage versus like, new stuff, or like I thought of it almost as like conservative like home values versus progressive
technology.
Yeah, but it weirdly like they symbolized it by like when they because at the end of the episode, because the hang up with her mom was like her mom only used old magic, and then the aunts were like cousins, yeah. Oh, she lied. Here's a picture of her using new magic, and they have her with like a nose ring and like the shortcut hair, and it's like it kind of came off as like an unsubtle metaphor for like coming out to your parents or something, or like being alt. And I was like, why would you try to put that in this arc? It doesn't work. You already had something that worked as like traditionalism versus like progressivism. You already had that going, but then you like hit it really on the nose by making like your mom go through like a goth alt phase. It's like,
yeah, I thought of it more. It was like you have like an uncle who like when they were growing up smoked weed, but now they're like super conservative.
Yeah, something like that. Or it's like, oh, you experimented with new magic in college, and I was like, oh, like you experimented with your sexuality in college? Is that what you're going for? What is this? Like,
I guess
I like that idea as like an arc you can go through, but it just doesn't feel at all tied to like the magic arc that they're going for. And it just feels really weird as like just a weird like punch to be like, yeah, take that. Republicans got them. Conservative parents, oh, you're hypocritical. Don't, and it was like also don't look up to your authorities all the time because they can be hypocritical, which is important too. But like, I just don't like that arc because it's just resolved with like a, hey, your mom's a fucking liar. Here's a picture.
Yeah, and another problem that comes up in this episode is they try to make Time's mom come off as like a unsavory character. But from our perspective, every time we see her in this episode, she is not particularly unpleasant.
Was she supposed to come off as unsavory? Because I never thought that ever.
Well, it's when like Parsley even gives a speech at her. She's like, yeah, like when she's yelling at her own parents, where her own parents want her to become like watch after the shop. They think this is just a phase. She yells at Time's mom, being like, "You do this, and this is." It's like we see Parsley's parents have a, like, we can agree with Parsley that it's unfair for the parents to assume this is just a phase, but like Time gets so broody about her mom and doesn't talk about it, so we just have to assume that her mom, there's something wrong with her mom,
or
like
her
a certain way that she thinks. No, because Parsley backs up Time, and so what happens is they try to make Time's mom as, you know, this unpleasant person, but we only get the children who don't have a wider perspective, like fighting against the mom, which just makes them seem like a bunch of broody children. Like if the parents had backed them up, where it's like, oh, see, even the person who once thought differently backed us up, or it was like different than us backs us up, then maybe she is being unreasonable. But at no point when we see her mom on screen or hear her talk does she come off as unreasonable.
Yeah, like, well, because her mom doesn't talk at all either. It's just kind of like there's an implied like bad relationship, and just that's it. It's
But is that because she's just a child who's like a broody teenager who's just, you know, fighting against authority, or is her mom a bad, like, we don't see that in Parsley. We see a genuine problem between parent and child, whereas it's just assumed to be happening between Time and her mom, but it isn't, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, I do think, speaking of Parsley's arc, because we haven't talked about it, where it's like she goes home to her parents, because like the school got infested or something, by the way. I don't know if that needs to be mentioned, but they have to go home for a weekend. They're forced to go home even if they don't want to. So they go to their parents' place, and Parsley is like convinced by their parents, or her parents, like that she should stay home and like help with the kids because we can't do it on our own. We have like 15 of them because we just can't stop having sex, I guess. Also, there's a daughter at home, so you're replaceable eventually. And so she was like, well, I don't want to do that. I want to go to school.
Well, that's what she argues. She argues that, like, use the new girl as my replacement.
Yeah, it's just like, it's weird. It's like the parents, if there really was a problem, just stop fucking. It's a weird, like, I get it. You want to help, like, the family is what she's saying, is you don't really have that opportunity. So once you get this out of your system, you know, come back home. She's like, no, I want to be an adventurer. And so the mom, they eventually reconcile it and they come to an understanding where, like, Parsley would come home over the weekends sometimes to help with the family, but also she's allowed to pursue her own dreams. I think that was all done pretty well. The argument didn't have any impact based on the voice acting, but
oh no.
Other than that, was a pretty decent, like, written thing.
Yeah. And that's about all I have to say for episode 4. Jesus, we are a third of the way done with it.
Oh, we're like an hour into recording. Jeez.
It's fine. So episode 5. Again, we're back to Sage. There's what is a botany class or something where they have to magically subdue a plant. And she's just goes up to the teacher, like, teacher, can I use old magic?
Yeah, we're retreading the same arc again.
Yeah, but at this point she's recognized she needs to be practiced in both. So why not just take this opportunity to use new magic? Because you need to practice both. You might as well try new magic.
I think I I remember
It was only because she was so insistent on it that I bring that point up,
Yeah.
by the way. She had to use old magic for this, for no particular reason.
I was gonna say I think the reason they just didn't illustrate it well was because there was a scene right before it, like before the opening credits or whatever, where she's like experimenting flying around on a broom with her new magic, and she's like, oh well, I don't have as much control over this yet, so I can't really rely on it. But they didn't make that the point.
That's
It
what the
was
point
just-
of the class is to practice.
Yeah. And so
So she knows she's bad and needs practice. So take this opportunity to practice.
yeah. And then I also noticed at this point, we're about to get into it in a few episodes, but I was like, what's up with all the fucking cats constantly? There's so many.
Oh, yeah.
Like, because she just bumps into another cat, and it's like, this is the 4th episode in a row that we bumped into a cat. There's something going on. Nothing interesting.
It's when you rewatch it, you get the value out of it.
Yeah, but it's also like there's a bunch of different cats and not all of them matter is the weird thing. But anyways, it's like, yeah, we go back to the class. The rat melting off its skin was kind of disturbing.
Oh yeah, that's just like the start of some disturbing concepts, but it's just like it's the teacher that's an asshole again, the one that poisoned all her students.
Mm-hmm.
She's just like, she just lets someone get their face eaten, and then later we learn it eats flesh. So, like, that plant could have eaten a child's face.
We would have seen like a skull. She would have been
That would have been pretty metal.
like the what's that one like rider guy that has like a skull head? I forget his name. She would have looked
I have
like
no clue what you're talking
a
about.
Ghost Rider.
Palace, Yorick?
Ghost Rider. Whatever.
Oh, I thought you said writer, like he wrote books.
No, Rider. It's
Yeah, Nicolas Cage.
that one. I wrote it down. This is where we get the explanation for old versus new magic, by the way. Like halfway into the arc, where they start saying like, new magic can do this, old magic can't do that. And like we kind of get an idea of this. When this concept has been in the show since like episode 2. It's episode 5 now.
Yeah.
You should have explained this earlier, had the arc later. Because you can do some kind of like diegetic, like as it goes, like storytelling about it. But I just felt so lost, like the entire time up until this point about new versus old magic.
Oh, definitely. This whole episode kind of just felt like prolonged pondering without any real thoughts being thrown around. Like, she goes
Yeah.
to a closet and cries for a bit, and then, like, 2 other people join her. And then she starts messing with magic until it just eventually works and then goes back to not working.
Yeah.
And then eventually things just resolve.
I mean, that's a common thing is like, oh, I got it to work because I really determined this time, but out in the field, it doesn't mean I'm going to be consistent. It just means I got it to work once. That's
No,
what I
but
was
then
going for.
she even tries it again and it doesn't. Like, she can't even get it consistently to work in theory.
Yeah. There's a lot of like, it feels like there's not progress. I agree with that. I think it's just, I've seen a lot of shows where it does the thing where it's like we build up to this moment and you get it, but then it's like another episode where you don't get it, like a couple episodes later, and so you show you're not done growing. You made a breakthrough or something, but
Yeah. You overcame a small barrier.
it doesn't really come off like that because it's like a big like I undid this huge mess. I must have some sort of mastery in this magic. It's not like, oh, I created a small bubble. Like that kind of like Succession moment should be like, you know, when she created like the hard light bubble where it's like this really tiny thing. And it's just like, oh, cool, I made this thing. That's where you get like your small success story. But
But then it just keeps going and she just then starts failing again.
yeah, it
and
failed, and then she like got rid of 1 million like goat frogs. And like
those are my favorite part of the show, by the way, is those goat frogs. I fucking love those things. They're adorable.
so, you know, some like pretty high level stuff she just kind of gets rid of. That's it.
Yeah.
And also for some reason they just make Time really rude and make Sage cry, whose VA makes it sound like she's laughing. Her voice.
Oh yeah, I thought she was laughing, and if it wasn't for her, like, facial expressions, I was like, oh, she was just
It's like her
laughing
like,
at all. Okay.
it's like, and then they say, "What the fuck? You made Sage cry?" And it's like, "Did you?"
Did they say fuck?
Not there, but
Oh, okay.
the bully is just like,
I just can't
you
tell.
made her cry. I love you now. Because the bully's name
And
is
she was just like,
Amaryllis.
I was genuinely with her when she was like, what did I do? I'm like, I don't know. What did you do?
Yeah, but also it's really weird because it's played for like a joke like throughout the rest of the episode that she's just cold and distant. And it's like she's kind of not, but also like, why are you treating it like a joke if it's that serious of a thing that it made her cry?
Yeah.
Does it just mean Sage is a little baby or like what? Nothing comes out of this. We just like run around the school. There's like an infinite hallway or something. Yeah,
That's kind of the end of the episode, right?
pretty much. It's 20 minutes of that. Oh, we met him last episode, but also this episode is Slime Boy or whatever, where he's just like, hey, hey
yes,
guys, how's
that's
it
when
going?
she was getting her stabbed.
Yeah, hi, it's me. Yeah, it's Slime Boy. Yeah.
He's just awkward.
And his line is just, I don't know. He's whatever. He grew on me later a little bit, but
Yeah, he's just kind of like tired and awkward.
he never sounds like he wants to be anywhere. That's it.
Which honestly, if they asked me to act for the show, I wouldn't either.
Yeah. I think that's it. Like nothing happens in episode 5. Like there's like kind of that arc about magic, but nothing interesting. I started taking more detailed notes after this. This is like after my first session.
Episode 6. It was kind of fun, honestly. I really liked the what's her name, Amaryllis. I really liked her getting the axe. That was actually really funny to me.
Yeah, they switch out the fencing and the axe.
Well, that was dumb. That was again the whole legacy thing where it's like Snapdragon's like, this big heavy axe is my legacy. It was my father's weapon. It's like, just ignore legacy.
I kind of liked it. I didn't want to interrupt.
Well, I liked it if we didn't have the whole Rosemary plot about legacy.
'Cause
I would have liked it if we were consistent.
I just liked it also as a secondary thing of like, not everything is going to be your best fit right off the bat, because it's like he's using the axe but isn't strong enough, Snapdragon is, and then Amaryllis, like the bully character, is like whacking the dummy with like,
Yeah, she goes fucking crazy with that axe.
but like before she's whacking it with like the fencing sword, where it's just like not doing anything because it's like pointy, you're supposed to stab.
It's a stabbing weapon.
And so they're just like, hey, swap, and then she goes and like destroys. She's the best character.
She wrecks like 3 of them, and it's great.
Oh well, I peeked.
It was at this point that she became my favorite character.
Yeah. Because she just, for the rest of the episode, by the way, she just constantly is chopping at things like the hedge maze and like every obstacle.
And she's a mage.
Yeah.
Like, she, first and foremost, she is a mage, but she just has this axe, and it's
Her
great.
wrist thing turns into like a mage wand, but she just uses the axe constantly.
She's like, we're in a magic forest? Huh. I'm gonna chop it down.
It's great.
Oh, this is also the episode where we get Aster, which is this, like, super hot boy who acts like he's tough shit, talking about all the contests he's won and stuff, when he's just incompetent.
He's supposed to be like
and
a toxic masculine figure, too. Like, but I like it. It's done pretty well, I think.
Well, I don't like how cynical the message is. Because
that I don't like.
The whole message of this romance subplot is just, oh, the person that you like, they are not the person you think they are. No one is.
That,
Like, I wrote down, the person you like is probably a shit person. I mean, it's true here, but it's not a good good basis for most relationships, because they're literally just waited out. Like, he's probably a shit person before we even learn he's a shit person.
by the way, this is like, we kind of learn that like Rosemary's mom Lavender is like a pretty like is a warrior, which like warriors are kind of a big deal, but like the new student comes in and it's like, oh, is that the weapon named Flowering Thorns? Your mom was Lavender, the legendary warrior? And then all the students are like, what?
Yeah, why does everyone not know?
It's like, why do they not know? And why has this not been brought up until episode 6 that she was like a big deal warrior? Because I knew she was like important.
Got him on the line.
Who do you have online?
CinemaSins, you want to
Yep.
talk to them?
Hello, CinemaSins?
They hung up on me.
Oh.
They hung up. They gave me, it was just a single thing.
That's the biggest.
And then they hung up.
The biggest sin was that you called CinemaSins. That's all the ding was for. Yeah, it just like it wasn't a big deal. Like in terms of cinema, it was just like a really weird like. Why is this being brought up just now to us? Like, if Rosemary's mom is such an important figure to her in her life, why did we not know that she was also just important to the world until halfway through your show? Like, why is it? It's weird.
Oh god, speaking of weird, there was this one awkward conversation between Time and Amaryllis where Amaryllis is talking about her mom, and they just awkwardly have this conversation where Time asks how much sex Amaryllis's mom has. Just like out of nowhere.
Well, because it's like, oh yeah, she had like 10 husbands or whatever, but they don't stick around for long. And she's like, oh, is your mom a prostitute? Not like in that exact words, but it's like
how much business does she get or something.
And then they
that.
say, oh, well, I get like actual business, and it's like, no, I meant the other kind. How much dick does she get? It's like, oh, okay, cool.
No, it's she just says like, oh, she gets a lot, she travels all the time, and then like pause, and then she's like, oh, do you mean the other kind of business? And she's like, yeah. And then they just like awkwardly stand there. And it was actually it was a little funny, but it was like, where the fuck did that come from?
Yeah. And then also the same character, like in this episode, was like, oh, are you guys gonna make out? And it's like, they're like 10-year-olds. That's what they look like.
Yeah.
It just like, and this is presented with like the same show where, you know, you have like the talk to the character, like talk to the camera about like what transgenderism is. So it seems like it's going for like a smaller kid tone, but then you can't talk about like making out and say shit and badass and whatever. It's like
bastard,
just weird tone for the whole thing. But the thing about Aster, who like Rosemary has a crush on, and that all gets resolved at the end, is Sage, her friend, is like jealous a little bit, and her first line about it to Snapdragon was really weird, because it's like, now I don't believe that all guys are awful, but it's like this really weird qualifier that she starts her sentence with. Like, now I don't want to come off as a man hater, but I hate a lot of men. It's just like really weird choice.
Yeah, you don't want to start a sentence with, I don't have a prejudice towards this group of people, but
yeah, it's like if I were just to go around and be like, well, yeah, I don't hate all of the Ethiopians, but, and you can't start a conversation like that. It's just weird.
Yeah. You want to get to the best episode?
There's still more I have to say about this one.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you?
We haven't really touched on like, because this arc doesn't really resolve. It just, Snapdragon gets fed up with like Sage talking all the time about like Aster and Rosemary. He's like, can you shut up?
He just yells at her, and the problem resolves itself.
It's just done.
When they bicker,
and then she just goes like, yeah, I'm sorry for obsessing over this boy, like, and being jealous. But it's like a weird kind of jealous too.
Okay, that's because there is a romance subplot between Snapdragon and Sage. Snapdragon likes Sage, and like they get close. But at one point, he also is like, it's because you like romantically like Rosemary. And like, so they put the idea out for us to consider, but then all signs point to Sage and Snapdragon. Like, that is the way they want it to go. But then they just throw out this random, well, maybe you like her. And it just goes nowhere, which like we kind of have gotten up to this point.
We also,
but, you know, whatever.
With the Sage thing, we do lean into, like, because she's like, you wouldn't get this. You're a guy. Guys don't talk about their feelings in a friendship. Like, I'm just quoting the show word for word there. And so she says a few more of those lines, and then Snapdragon, because also this is the character that gets like a transgender arc, so it kind of sets up for that nicely, which is good. But eventually, like, we kind of learn that Sage is prejudiced in some way, so it kind of gets addressed. Like, I think this scene would be enough. It was just weird at the beginning, where it's just, we didn't build up like this character being really sexist in any way. And she's just like, well, I don't hate all
it's
men.
Like not in her character, because she is like understanding to a certain degree,
and like shy
she gets
and
fed
kind.
Up with Rosemary,
yeah.
But like, who wouldn't get fed up with Rosemary?
Yeah, it's just like, it comes out of nowhere. And the first line talking about it isn't like, it doesn't build up like a big outburst or anything. It's just, it starts out with like, I don't hate all men, but you know, these guys, it's not right for Rosemary. It's like, start out with something small and then build up to like, guys don't get it. blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, you have the one side of addressing the prejudice of Sage, but also setting up for like the transgender arc. I think this episode is one of the better ones, for sure.
Yeah.
It does a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And they have like a couple other like characters, like Parnell is just this like crybaby kid who likes his goat frog. He's great. There's this one
Can you
line.
blame him? Have you seen those things?
What?
Oh, I know what line you're going to talk about. It's great.
It might not be, but it's where he like jumps into like the chasm of like nothingness, and there's just a trampoline at the bottom, and then he get across, and he's like, "I don't believe in oblivion. Want some trail mix?"
He's just not scared of death.
But he's just a
And I just
crybaby
love
character, anyways. It's great. And then also the episode resolves because these characters don't really have an arc. Parsley and Parnell, they're paired up for the obstacle course that this whole episode is centered around. They get to the end and like
They tie for first place.
Parnell gets second because they tied as like a group, but then they're like, well, Parsley destroyed more dummies or whatever, so you know Parnell doesn't get the trophy. But Parsley's like, oh, I want to be a good person, and then a couple of minutes before this happens, the teacher's like, well, the only reason I would dock you any points would be if there was like a severe injury to another like student. And so they set up, you know, Aster being really shitty, and then she just drops her like 50-pound hammer on his foot. He gets
She just breaks his foot.
oops. And they're like,
And the teacher just laughs it off. He's like, oh, you silly
he's
kid.
such a douchebag. He deserved that.
He is a pretty big douche.
Why don't you?
All right, second place.
Yep. Everything works out. Happy ending. Because Aster did suck. He was like a poser, like toxic masculinity guy.
There was not a single redeeming
I was
quality
really
about him.
worried they were going to take this into like a man-hating direction based on the subtext of both Sage and Aster in the beginning, and based on what I had heard about like the writing team being all like very far left-leaning women, and then one trans man leading like head director.
Yeah.
Which would like balance things out a little bit, but I was just thinking about like how all the writers, and there's been this controversy going around. I don't want to talk about it that much, but there was like the one writer that was like tweeted consistently about like how much she hated men, and so I knew that going in, and I expected this arc to be about how all men suck in some way, but it wasn't, which was interesting. And I thought it was actually a really, of all the episodes, probably one of the best. It just is self-contained. It does everything pretty well. You know, 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10. It's like decent.
Other than Aster just being a complete insufferable character who is annoying.
It gets too much screen time. Just a little too much overselling how much of a douchebag he is. Yeah.
Yeah, it just takes way too long for her to get sick of him.
And like, there's nothing super remarkable about this episode, which is why at most I'd give it like a 6. It's like passable and good, but like nothing that I would ever really, really enjoy out of this episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, episode 6 gets a 6.
All I have to say for
That's it. There's a lot of moving pieces that I just kind of remembered as we went going, so I just wanted to bring all that up.
Gotcha. Now to the big one.
Oh boy.
Episode 7.
Second half of the showtime, guys. Things start to happen. It's great.
Thank God. I actually enjoyed the show much more from this episode onward.
Yeah, it gets better.
Like, this is a good, like, cut and, like, hey, we have things happening now.
It averages, I think, like, apart from the finale being, like, bad, the second half kind of averages around, like, a 4.5, probably, whereas the first part was, like, it's like a 2 consistently. It's not great. 1.5 even. This one, it definitely starts picking up here. One thing I didn't like at the beginning is, like, they have that, you know, direct dialogue. Like, all of the headmasters that have been, you know, are immortal at the school are talking to each other about why they're doing the cave challenge for the billionth year in a row. And it's like, you could have any other character have this conversation and it would be perfectly fine, but you have it be the only characters that would know this. It's just weird. Very minor thing.
Instead of, like, pondering about why they're doing it, she's like, this is the reason, go.
Yeah.
She literally screams at them to, like, run. That's like one of her bits, is she just screams at them, like, run away, which is a really odd thing to say. Especially as, like, the head mistress.
Yeah.
One of them.
Another thing that I didn't like at the beginning, So as they're going to the cave and they're explaining stuff, there's this one like really side character. The one got her like flesh face eaten a couple episodes ago. Is like, I'm gonna drop out. I don't want to do this anymore. And then the bully character goes, just for the record, I find cowardice very attractive. Like 5 seconds after silence, and it's like, okay, cool. So
like no one gives a shit. I don't care who would say that. I wouldn't care what you find attractive.
It wasn't funny.
Like what does that quantify? Like shut up. Let's just get on with it.
It's like, just for the record, I ate an apple for breakfast today. All right, cool.
Everyone applauds.
And then everyone clapped. So yeah, they explain like why they're going into the cave. It's for like holy water that can heal anything. It's just like their first mission adventure, and if you don't come up to the surface, you're expelled, basically. If you don't come up the surface with your holy water, you get expelled from the school because you're not good enough.
So death or expulsion is typically.
Yeah.
So they find just a well that's like convenient, not hard to get to. It's empty. And then they fight some crab monsters, run away from them.
It gets kind of interesting here. This is where the blood starts coming out of nowhere.
Yes.
It gets really bloody. You don't see like guts and gore or anything, but it's like
there just has not been a single drop of blood in this entire show up to this point.
Yeah.
And then there's just like someone is dying from blood
with
loss.
the exception of like a flashback in episode 3 when the professor is talking about how he's friends with Rosemary's mom or something.
Oh, yeah.
But that's like really minor and quick. This is like we're slashing through dozens of bugs. They are exploding in blood out of nowhere. And so it's just like, oh, cool. This is like a shit got real moment, I guess.
I guess.
And then like Rosemary, the sword fighter, she does a thing where she goes under the bug, but she gets cut by it. It looks kind of shallow, all things considered. And the blood doesn't drain a bunch, but it becomes a big plot point where it's like she starts hiding the cut. And I think that could have been interesting, but it didn't really go anywhere.
But they don't do anything with that. No one is like, why did you hide it?
Yeah. Like, it's a little bit about, like, going blindly into danger and not worrying about, like, the consequences, but it's not explored enough for my taste. And it also, because of the blood loss, she starts saying really wacky things. Like,
she's so quirky.
Oh, is this blood? That's a surprise party. Isn't this supposed to say inside me? It's just like, what?
Shut the fuck up.
You could say like funny things, but she just kind of mumbles like for a long time. But then it becomes like desperate to get the healing water to heal Rosemary. And what I thought they were originally going to do was like have it so they sacrifice the stuff like to get up to the surface, like for passing or whatever, and, you know, heal herself. And then it's like, well, you showed courage and like helped your party first, so we're going to keep you in the school or whatever. And that'd be like the whole arc, right?
Yeah. But what was the goblin's name? Buckle?
Buckle?
They have some riddle they have to solve with a goblin named Buckle, and the riddle's like, oh, what am I? It's just like, there's 4 of them or something.
Yeah.
The riddle didn't make a ton of sense, to be honest.
Yeah, the riddle is just, who am I? And it's like, you're Buckles. He's like, nope, you're wrong.
But at one point, like, one of the Buckles like throws something at them, and that's important later. It just looks like a
the
rock
big
or
shiny
something to
rock.
us.
And so there were like, it was not related to winning the riddle for the holy water, which is what I thought it was going to be related to.
Buckles just throws shit at
He just throws a rock that's like, here's a key item. Keep this in mind for later. So, and they were like, you know, you do the riddle for the holy water, but it has nothing to do with that.
It sends them to the next well. They drop in through like the sky.
That's separate from the rock, though. The rock is just tangential for no reason. It's just there.
I think it was supposed to be like a burn. You got the answer wrong because 2 of them said you're Buckles, and it's like burn, throw egg at you.
Oh, I thought they threw it to them after they beat the challenge, though.
I can't remember.
They might have not. It's whatever. If they did, they didn't. Whatever. It wasn't that big of a deal, but.
But then anyways, then they fall into the cavern with another well. This one is actually full. But as they take the water and heal Rosemary, these 2 diamond statues come to life. and oh, you can't break diamonds. So they end up getting the diamonds to smash into each other, but that then causes them to crumble, trapping them from the door.
Yeah.
So they kind of just sit there and play Truth or Dare, but it's like Goblet and Challenge or something.
That's what it... Okay, so it's Gospel or Gauntlet, because I wrote the name down because I was just like, it's going to come up at some point.
Just call it Truth or Dare.
It's just Truth or Dare. That's all it is. And it's like, we stopped the show. It's like, oh, we're locked in. We won. Let's spend 5 minutes playing Truth or Dare, which would be really good for character development, but they don't use it like that.
They try to for time, don't they?
Yeah, they do it for some of it. It does do a little bit, but it's like, it's not enough, I think. Because some of the beginning ones are like, oh, go stand on that rock. Oh, Sage, who do you like? Oh, you know, and then they build up to it. But time is like, oh, how do you feel about your mom?
Me no like mommy.
And she doesn't open up about it or whatever.
No, that's when we learn about like her dad and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
Like that's, and like we get a flashback to like how bad it actually is back in her.
I watched this like 3 or
alright,
4 days ago,
honestly.
so I'm kind of iffy on it.
It's not as bad as you think it is. I think it was actually pretty alright.
It was decent, but like it felt like it should have gone on a little bit longer to get like more about our main characters that we don't really know about. But this is where we learn about what the rot was from episode 3 in episode 7. So again, it's like that 4 episode buffer of like, we're gonna name drop something and then explain it later, and you get like, oh, there's a whole war behind it, and it's like, you know, nature.
I get that. Like, I think that wasn't as bad as like old versus new magic, where that's a system, whereas rot is like an antagonist.
You can just see
an antagonistic force. So we saw what it was doing to the tree, and we could infer that stuff. Whereas old magic and new magic, we cannot infer the difference.
Yeah, but it was like we didn't know what the big deal was. Like, is it just this one tree, or like what? And it's like we get the full.
I think she says that she needs to solve the rot, implying it's a bigger problem. I honestly don't think the rot is like them inferring about the rot it being a bad thing and not explaining it till later. I think that was done rather well, honestly.
It was not as bad as old versus new magic, but I wish there was more to it, because it feels like, again, it was at the end of an episode. I think my biggest problem was that they name dropped it rather than like leaving the name drop for later when they explain it, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I don't know. I think you can name drop an idea and then like let it simmer. Like, what could that be? And they're like, oh, that's what that is.
Yeah. I feel like that simmer should happen not across 4 episodes though, 5 episodes.
Oh, definitely. We could have cut out like the 3 repetitive episodes about Sage wondering if she should use new magic or not. Yeah. Okay. So then the funniest shit in the entire show happens, and by funny I mean what the fuck just happened.
All the last 2.5
they're
minutes.
Like, oh hey, magic life water, it gives life energy. Parsley's like, hey, just throw that egg in there, and they're like, what egg are you talking about? And so apparently the rock that was thrown at them was a dragon egg, which, you know, Buckles just throws around dragon eggs apparently. But he throws this dragon egg at them, and so now they just have this dragon egg. They throw it in, and the dragon starts like smashing around trying to escape, and eventually it breaks down the door or it breaks through the rubble through the door that they were trapped in, and they're just riding it along, and they ride it all the way outside, where then as they're flying around outside, the dragon just starts decaying into bones. And I'm like, oh, the dragon is dying for some reason. And so then it like lands and they all get off as the dragon is a skeleton. And I'm like, that's so sad, the dragon died. And then it gets up. It says, I'm okay. Flies into the air, explodes, and turns into like 4 moons.
What happens after that immediately is Rosemary goes, hey, Sage, is that how stars are made? And then she nods, and that's it. That's the end of the scene. There's more that I want to explain after that, but I thought the part where like the egg was a dragon egg, that was a fine reveal. That was whatever. The part where it just decayed, died, then didn't, and then actually died again. That was the problem.
Then exploded. Why did it explode?
Because like I was thinking, oh, he's dead, and then oh, he's not dead. That's the joke. Is like he's a skeleton. It's like, okay, bye guys, and he's gonna come back in the finale, and then he explodes. into stars.
Okay, you were talking about how like we've watched so many things together.
Oh,
And what were you saying about how
I was in a
reacted
Discord
to
call
this?
with Nick as he was catching up before tonight. It was the most emotive I've seen him over anything, to where I could tell he wasn't faking his like flabbergastedness. Like, I've known, like, talked to him a ton over the past, I don't know, like 3 years, 4 years. And it's like, that moment he was like breaking down with emotion. Like, what?
That is the most
fuck?
flabbergasted I have been over any piece of media I've seen. Because
Usually you're
it's
just like, what?
why did it
You're just like,
decay?
oh, okay, what? But you were like, oh, like an amount of emotion I've never heard from you when like watching something.
Yeah, it was just so much to take in. Where I started reacting like that before even the craziest shit happened. I was doing that when it started decaying. I was like, oh, okay. And I was like getting super heated. I'm like, that wasn't even the start of
And then
when it got up and just said, I'm okay. I'm like, all right, he's going to go. He's going to fly away. He explodes.
then it turns into stars.
I didn't even catch what the girl said because I was just screaming.
But then it doesn't end there, because we still have 60 seconds left, and it's the second half of the show, so we gotta set up a plot. So it turns out the cats are humans, and they're from a place called Witch Country, which we've never heard of before. Witch Country? I don't know. One
just
of them.
the one cat.
And so...
Shut the fuck up.
Just the cat's like, yeah, I'm a cat lady and I'm evil. And then she makes a smoke ball. She's like, do they know too much? Are they learning about how Earth is rotting from the magic? And she's like, no, they're learning too much. We gotta kill them. Yes.
Well, no, the evil mist says that she has to kill them because she's against killing, which is really weird to set the moral boundary for actually wait, let's just start talking about episode 8 because that's where I wrote my notes for this.
It just ends with like, hey, here's the entire background and plot happening, here's what the thing does, the Earth is dying of magic, here's like lore after the dragon exploded. So after I watched that episode, I had to take like I had to take like 20 minutes to go to the bathroom, just like, what the fuck happened? Okay, cool, I get it now. And it links back to the beginning and everything, but it's just like, what the fuck about this cat? What is this? That's...
yeah, so what I had written down was just like, why is the obviously evil sidekick so hesitant to kill in the beginning? Like, doesn't the hesitancy to do these evil acts usually come, like, after an arc something? You know, where they learn to change their ways? Like, you kind of have to establish the evildoer's ways before...
I disagree, because I think this character, the whole point of her was that she is not a bad person, but she's just from bad person world and is living a sucky life, and she doesn't want to do it. And showing the initial hesitancy is like hey, she's not a bad person, but like, you know.
She just doesn't feel loyal because she is immediately hesitant to when we know her, where it's never just like...
She's hinted at being evil before. I think because...
Or hinted at being hesitant before. It's just from the get-go, she's like, oh, hey, evil subordinate do thing. Where it's just like, no, immediately. It's the first time we're learning of this evil organization, and they just feel incompetent at that point if the first henchman says no to their orders, and then they don't do anything about it.
We learn about later that like she was ordered to just spy on the kids, and then the orders changed to killing them, and that's what she had a problem with. But again, it's because it's all in 60 seconds. That's not established well.
I think that's the final
episode. We learned that in episode 12, when we should have learned that in episode 7. It was like, I think we kind of touch on it, where it's like, but I was just supposed to spy on him. But it's like, again, it's in 60 seconds. After a dragon explodes and turns to skeleton and stars, and you're like, your mind's already, like, melded. Like, your brain has stopped functioning. And then you're like, hey, there's actually a secret evil place called Witch Country, and it also has cat people, and also they're working for, like, a mob boss shadow guy, and also they're evil. And then we're, like, dropping hints that, like, this character is not as evil as she seems. All on top of that. Just, we need to establish that, like, she was spying on them, and it's the orders changing that's the problem, which she does fight back on, but it's not clear why she's fighting back on them until episode 12 with, like, a retrospective lens on that. which leads into episode 8, which is a two-parter.
Yeah, so we honestly, when this episode started, I thought I missed an episode because we were just at a festival.
Many
It's just a
months have passed
Halloween
now, by the way, because we
practically.
end on like the tree in summer.
Did
yeah,
they?
because we end on the tree in summer in the last episode, and then at the beginning of the next episode, we start at the tree in fall, where it's like the leaves are falling off.
Oh, okay.
So we know it's much later, but it still feels like just a weird jump. I agree with you.
Yeah, my favorite part about this festival is that it is illegal to not dress up for it. Which is to, like, drive the plot that, like, oh, there's this cat girl hiding amongst the audience, and, like, there are multiple
Because
cat
people are lazy and
costumes.
just want to wear
But
cat
it's
ears.
Well, and it is also illegal to where it's just like, oh shit, pass the cat ears, bro.
Yeah, that is pretty nice.
And also, this is where we get further development in Snapdragon's like transgender arc, where he is just dressed as a mermaid and like a female mermaid, not a merman,
Like a
mermaid.
seashell bra and everything.
And we just never got. It was just like so sudden. It took me a second to realize it was Snapdragon, to be honest, because we never got a scene of him being interested.
He had
in
like hair
cross-dressing,
extensions
which
too,
I think would have been
which
the
is like
perfect.
that's not his hair. It was
Yeah, I think it would have been the perfect segue into this arc was if previously somewhere he just like, let's say he passed by a dress shop and he's like kind of looked at his silhouette. You know how when people pass by like a clothing store in some movies, they'll like see themselves in the reflection like superimposed over the outfit. Yeah, show one of those. And he's like, oh, he's interested in cross-dressing.
They do show
That's
him like
fine.
interested and looking over at like Aster a couple episodes ago, which I thought was gonna be like, oh, he's gay, but then nothing comes out of that. I don't know why Snapdragon was looking over so much.
And he like says he's handsome, or that he's cute.
It might
It's like, okay. I mean, honestly, I took Snapdragon to be bisexual. That was kind of it was never really clear.
Feels like every other character's bisexual in some way, for sure. I don't know. It was just like, oh, he likes men.
You just gotta assume like bisexual until you're told.
I mean, that's how it should be, anyways. I think that's like a good writing style.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just everyone is bisexual until you see a relationship on screen.
Well,
and it's like it could be either way.
I also didn't think that we needed so many characters' sexual like preference. Like we didn't need everyone to have like romantic plots. Like some of them are just unnecessary.
Yeah,
for
and it felt like
characters.
a way of like we want to represent as much as we can, which is noble, but also like if everyone has their own
spreading yourself
if
too
everyone
thin.
has a I'm not straight arc, which it shouldn't be an arc, it should just be a thing, which it is with some characters. It's just like you made the entire show about sexuality without exploring sexuality all that much, like with relationships and everything, and it's at the cost of your own world if you're exploring like relationships a ton, which they're not that much. I think it's mostly fine. It just gets kind of confusing.
Yeah, at that point, it's like, why did you make this like a fantasy action show? If
Like sexuality was going to be your like, and Steven Universe is like that too, where it explores a lot of that.
just make it like a character drama, like more of a character drama than an action.
And I figured it was going to
show.
be a character drama where it's like the first 12 episodes are just at school, and like it has character drama elements, but then they also try to push this overarching like bad guy plot, and they just don't.
Which, yeah.
Anyways,
Honestly, it was more fun watching the badly written character drama than it was any action.
well, I think some of the
scene.
character drama was actually pretty well written too. Is the thing. It's like just none of the action was like
Some of
at
it
all
was, yeah.
compelling.
The
But
majority.
I think
wasn't
that's why I
really
like some of
well,
those
though.
kinds of shows, like Steven Universe is like there's no point in the action. If you're watching Steven Universe because it looks cool action-wise, you're not watching the right show. It is so character-driven.
Yeah.
But then this show is like, what if we were character-driven with like 6-ish main characters, but also had an overarching plot, which is just too much to sandwich together. Especially if you want to
Definitely.
explore the characters like in a deep way. It's like Evangelion did it pretty well, but like obviously the action suffers a lot in Evangelion even. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
People will go in expecting like super cool robot show from that, but there was something I was going to say about Snapdragon, but I don't remember it. We'll come back.
Well, in the meantime, I want to talk about the orgy joke that they make, where just the Professor
Kawakami. Caraway.
uh, Caraway is just talking with the two
It's Aloe, and I don't
cousins,
remember the other name.
and they're just like, "Oh, yeah," I'm just
Okay.
calling them the cousins, and they're just like, "Oh, you know each other," and they just look at each other and it's like, "Yeah, we've been to a few parties," and it's like, I get the feeling that they're implying about they've been to orgies together because they have this really weird tension when they
Yeah,
say it.
like it's just a weird joke where it's like, oh, there's something more going on, but it's just nothing else comes out of it.
It feels like they just want to fuel like the shipping in this show at points. Is that just me?
I don't agree with that, but it's also because shipping does not bother me at all as like a thing.
Well, it doesn't bother me, but it's just it feels like they're pushing for ships to happen just to like
Have
make
like a
fans
moment
happy.
where every character combination has a moment. I don't even mind that either.
Yeah, well, like most of them at least. It's just like it was so awkward and out of pocket when it happened. Like, oh, okay.
I remember what I was gonna say about the Snapdragon part, and is that the guy who like proposes to him is named Cal. He's voiced by ProZD,
Oh, okay.
which he does a really good job. But it was like I heard that, I'm like, is that ProZD? Why is he in this show?
Oh yeah, and they make him like the
Yeah,
transphobic
he's like,
guy.
ew, you're weird. You're weird. He had really good delivery on that. I do like that character. Not because he is transphobic. I just think he has a good performance.
It reminds me of the one Game Grumps bit where Dan is just screaming,
Yeah.
"You're a freak!"
You freak! You're a freak! That part is
good.
really good because his costume is literally he's just in a tuxedo and like proposing to random women like a douchebag.
I mean, there's one point where we see this like big orc girl just like holding him against the wall.
And he's like, please put me down. Start over. He's just a sleazy guy, and he does it really well. But in terms of plot, as you can tell, it's very secondary, because we don't talk about it at the beginning at all, typically.
It's mostly character interactions. Oh yeah, at one point we get Mr. Neppy Cat back, which is the name of the giant cat, 9 foot tall.
Tony the
cat
Tiger
creature.
over here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Neppy Cat.
He also can't speak English fully, and it's funny when a bunch of women try and hit on him, and he just goes, "Neppy Cat can't speak full sentences" or something.
I have very
And
few
they're just,
emotions
like,
I can
still into him.
express.
But he then chases down Time, who has some arc. I honestly
It was
don't
about-
remember. But Time
Is it important to what you're
Sorry,
saying
go
at
ahead.
all? I was just gonna say it's like about going.
not
It's just
really.
about like, do I see my mom or not, or like, do I like go see my dad and run away
Oh.
or whatever? That's
No, she has
the
whole thing
healing
is
water.
she's going to run
Yeah.
back to she has the healing water to cure the root. That
so
we
it was
got in the
important. I just
previous
forgot it was
episode.
important.
Yeah. Wait, didn't months pass? that she
Yes,
could've
because it
done
was
this
in summer and then went to like October or whatever. But
Okay, cool, whatever. But anyways, Neppy Cat is like, "You're being hunted. Someone is coming to kill you." And she just doesn't show any facial emotions, but her voice is like, "What?" But she's just like looks bored when she's saying it.
but then he's like, "Oh, she is a cat that is hunting you down." And she looks over the crowd, and literally everyone's dressed up as a cat, basically. Which I like
Yeah.
how they do it as a throwaway joke of like the costume being like, "Oh, everyone's really lame because it's just a last second costume to be a cat," and then everyone is a cat, and that's like a plot point. That was clever. It was good writing there.
Yeah.
The show might be a 3 after we're getting through this, actually. Wow, radical pushing on my score there from 2.5 to 3, but you know, who mama, this show is pushing boundaries.
Yeah, there's also another plot, like a subplot of Rosemary and Sage are fighting, because Rosemary wants to go throw
this.
flaming axes, and Sage wants to go like carve
And
pumpkins.
so they
or
like
something.
accentuate
And-
the characters to be like, I am cool and you are boring. These are the activities we want to do.
Well, also, we get this weird thing where we're supposed to feel bad for Rosemary, but she is unyielding, uncompromising here. And it's like, if you support your friend, like, Sage is saying that she always follows Rosemary. They always do what Rosemary wants. And Rosemary's throwing a little hissy fit because she doesn't get the thing that she wants, like she
And they already
always
did
does.
the whole activity
And,
where
like,
she did do what they do together at this festival. I remember the scene before. There was
Yeah.
a whole thing. Yeah, that was it. They just
And then they cut, and they went and did what she wanted to, and now Sage is just mad at her.
And they just did another thing where she got her way, and then they're like, well, we can still do this other thing, and then Rosemary's like, no, I will still want to do my thing because your stuff is boring.
Yeah, she literally doesn't learn a lesson from it and wants to do it again. But by the end, I think it's by the end of the episode 9, it's like we're meant to feel bad for Rosemary.
'cause she's all
And it's like,
alone.
no, she's not willing to compromise with her friends, so she will be
Also-
alone. Like, learn to compromise with people and you won't be
The
alone.
big impact of this fight where it goes quiet and then they like start crying and run away or whatever, or they get like quiet and distant, is Sage says, Rosemary, you're annoying. It's just the truth.
Which, like, can you argue with her?
It's not even that big of an insult. It's like, you're a little meanie. And that's it.
You're a little meanie.
It's
My
just a
favorite
Hearthstone
Hearthstone
joke.
quote.
Don't worry about it. But yeah, it's just, she says, you're annoying. And then that's it. She just is like, oh, I can't believe you would say I'm annoying. Is that what you really think? It's like, it's like a baby shit. It's like an arc of like, this is where you curse at each other. You say shit and badass in the show. But the big word that breaks you is annoying. It's not even like
Something I'm sure you've heard
it's not even like a
multiple
minute
times.
rant about like, you know, it's not a breakdown of her character or anything where it's like, all you ever want to do, blah, blah, blah. It's just like this 5-second moment of like, wow, Rose, you're annoying. And then it just makes them distant because like it was built up a little bit, but like the payoff scene was just so weak.
And that leads to the entirety of episode 10, which we'll get to in time. I think we're still on episode... Do you have anything
We
else
haven't
to say
talked about
episode
all
8?
of it all.
Oh, yeah.
Plot moment.
What did she do?
Nothing, according to the notes. I have something at the end.
No, she turned everyone to stone at the end. She cast like a level 7 spell or something, and she was like...
We learned that the spell is like a little charm that she gets at the beginning of the episode where it's like, you can only use it once, so use it wisely. And then yeah.
It's like a scroll.
Just
like a one.
you just put it inside your
scroll.
Terrasphere magic ball, and you just like summon it. So it has like a full minute charge up time where they're all just kind of standing still underneath the stone thing. They're like, oh, we're gonna die, and then because they don't have their magic or whatever, but like there's enough time they can just move out of the way for some reason. That's what the CinemaSins moment. Whatever, it doesn't matter all that much.
Ding.
I think the idea is that time is slowed down and it's like it really cast in real time, like a second or something, but the scene goes on forever. Anyways, Sage is trying to get her Terrasphere thing from underneath the like this awning that it got knocked underneath. And then Parsley, like the dwarf, goes over and picks up Neppy Cat to try to save him at like the last second, like waits a while. It's like, oh, I should probably get the cat. Then right before she makes it back, Sage casts a bubble and the spell misdirects and turns everyone but them to stone. Except for also Olive.
Yeah. And that also, it kind of goes against the whole, like, we'll see in episode 11, she just has this wild, like, incompetency, which we've also seen in previous episodes with new magic, but she could just, like, deflect a massive power, like a
doomsday
powerful
spell.
She's just like, oh, fuck that counter
And
spell.
I think it's all fine. It's just the moment takes too long. Also, before this, I forgot what happened, is that Olive, who's the cat lady, gets the bottle, and she's like, haha, I got the holy water, you fool. Oh, you want this? You're gonna have to come back to which country and talk to my master. They're like, well, we don't go anywhere. We're kind of having fun here. And so she just drops it and breaks it. and that's it. It's really sad.
Aha! Fuck you!
I mean, now, Time can't get it back to her dad, and she's really upset about that. But then, yeah, afterwards, it's like the stone thing just takes forever. They're just sitting there, and it's like just a weird directed moment. I get what they were going for, but it didn't come off the right way.
Oh, and also, Snapdragon and
Amaryllis.
what's her name? And
Billy Girl.
Amaryllis are playing like a VR game this whole time.
Yeah. That goes more into the next episode, but they're just like...
Yeah, because they're having a whole like fight right now where I don't even remember what this fight was about.
It was about like emotions and like Snapdragon doesn't want to open up to Amaryllis because he thinks she won't care or whatever. But the big thing is they put up a magical barrier so they don't get turned to stone, but it's just to contain them. It's the same spell that Sage uses, but they use it just so that way no one can hear or like disturb them while they're like playing the game. So it's like, they have their own little private place to talk was the idea. That was fine.
And the whole joke becomes, they can't see what they're walking. They're going to bump into a stone statue.
I did like that joke, actually. It was pretty good.
Well, no, there was one joke that comes after they take the goggles off, where she, like, casts a spell at Olive, misses, and hits a bird. And then later, at the end of the next episode, after, like, she makes this joke. She's like, don't worry, that bird was just decorative. And we cut to after everyone's been unturned from stone. We see her sitting over a bloody corpse of a bird, and she just goes.
It's just like nothing's left of it except like a leg.
So
She's
funny.
Like, oh shit! Oops.
And a bloody pile.
It's great.
Too.
That one is one of the best jokes in the show because it's really quick.
That was my favorite joke in the entire
it's great.
show.
What were we talking about before that with like the stone? I like because it goes more into episode 9. They're just stumbling around and they're like, wow, because the game is about frozen people, and so they're like bumping into frozen people. It's like, are there more than normal? So yeah, that's the idea. Is why does my computer keep falling asleep? Okay, so sorry that we cut out there. My computer's been falling asleep like this entire recording, and like my audio desyncs. So yeah, we've been going to the bathroom during them, but we were ending about talking about episode 8.
I pee a lot.
And how everything was stone, and like Olive was not turned to stone or whatever. In episode 9, so they're playing the entire VR game during that thing, and they learn to kind of like work with each other, or they learn at the end they're supposed to work with each other. But there's this whole build up between Snapdragon and Amaryllis, all while they're bumping into stone people that they don't know are stone people. Just that they need to learn to trust each other a little bit more. That's about all that happens with them. I don't remember anything like super bad happening with that, or anything important. It was mostly Olive and like the main 3 that aren't stone.
Yeah. And then they eventually just like corner her in the next episode, right?
I'm talking about episode 9 right now. Oh yeah, because we kind of already transitioned into it.
They eventually corner her this episode.
Yeah, it's like they. It's weird because like Rosemary runs off on her own, and it was like after what happened last time, she just didn't learn her lesson, and everyone's like, "Don't do it again! Oh, I'm gonna do it again!" And then just nothing comes out of it.
Yeah.
Just
like she's not in particular. Like she just wins the fight 1v1.
Yeah, 5-minute showdown or whatever, and then they come back to the rest of the party.
Challenge showdown.
But it's weird. It's weird that like every time Olive's alone, she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna like." They do like the JoJo thing, which I like in JoJo's because that's the whole point. But they like talk to themselves as like, "This is the order I'm gonna do everything in." Da 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 da. Okay, go. And then she does the thing and it doesn't work. She's like, "What? My plan didn't work." And then she runs away. She's the only character that does this. And then she like hides behind another thing and starts calculating out loud, like talking, and her lips are moving. It's just like really weird. And like just it feels like it's really padding up screen time for no reason, and I didn't like that about it.
Yeah.
The fight between Olive and Rosemary, like the cat and the sword lady, there's a lot of cuts to black just for like implied action, and like it's just a really boring fight. And yeah,
I mean, they did one part where it was like they did like there was a shining light in the background and it was just their silhouettes fighting. It lasted for like 3 seconds and it could have actually been a cool little segment. Mm-hmm. Like there's a really cool episode of Samurai Jack where I think it's called Jack versus the Shinobi. where like they have this entire scene where the screen is just black or white in sections. And so when in black, the shinobi is invisible, and when in white, Jack is invisible. And it's them like crossing. And it's really cool looking because Jack has to beat him because the sun is setting and he's running out of time. And it's just one of my favorite fights in like an animated medium because it's so simple in its like lines, but the implied action of like the need to defeat him is so good. And they could have done something just not even that similar, where it was just the black and white silhouettes fighting.
Because most of the time it's like just in a like brightness turned down alleyway. That's the best way I could describe it. And like there's a couple of cool things where like Olive will slam like her staff down and then like do something, or Rosemary will like stab her sword into the concrete or something, and that's fine. But all that comes out of it is that she gets one big slash on the cat and it takes her down. That's it. Like Rosemary just hits Olive with her sword, and then she's like, "Ooh, ow!" And then she runs away for 10 minutes.
Yeah, she just gets like cut in the arm, and she's just like, "I am incapacitated now. I must run."
It is a deep gash, but she's like a magic user, and it's like, I get they don't want it to be too violent, but at the same time,
they also haven't really implied that there's magic specialty. You're just kind of a mage or not.
Yeah.
I mean, they do. There's one point where, like, at the very second episode, where Sage is like, do I want to become, like, what kind of a mage do I want to become? But then every other time we see magic happen, someone is competent in, like a vast field.
Yeah. And then we also get, like, which country explained here. And it's like, it's better than the other ones. Speaking of just, like, things not really being explained, so you just kind of assume they're just whatever. It's like, we kind of get a feel of what which country is, but we still don't really get it. It's the bad place. And it's just, there's no stakes to any of this entire episode. Like, we don't know what Olive can even do. She's just, like, she did the one spell, and then some, like, generic magic, and then just, after she got her arm cut, she just runs away. They do have like another fight where it's like Sage does something, the mage, and then Rosemary is like, "Why did you do that?" And then Sage just says, "Really?"
She teleports her away from the Terrasphere.
Yeah. And so, like at the end of the episode, after the conflict's resolved, they turn everyone away from Stone because they smash like her magic sphere thing and reverse a spell.
I like how the only thing up to this point that has been established is there is a way to reverse it if you have the Terrasphere.
Yeah, there's a way to reverse.
No one has explained how. So she just breaks it.
That probably works. It's like the one thing they really emphasize is every spell can be undone as long as you like have the original spell origin or whatever. But it only comes up at this one point. It's fine. They have a thing where like Rosemary and Sage kind of make up, but then they say, well, we have to spend time apart. And then it's implied that Sage and Snapdragon are becoming either closer friends or something more. And then so like Amaryllis and Rosemary are left on their own, which like implies going to the next episode, they're going to like try to become friends, which I think like it's a good way to end, is that like, yeah, not everything's fixed immediately, but also these conflicts don't feel very serious at all.
Well, yeah, but then that, like, nice setup where it's like, okay, they're probably friends now because they go walk off on their own. It is all, like, all the little subtle things, like, okay, they're friends now. I get that, you know, they didn't have to beat me over the head with it. The next episode starts with Rosemary thinking out loud, are Sage and Snapdragon just hanging out now? And then Amaryllis comes in off screen. She just pops her head in and goes, yep, that's a thing.
Yeah.
It's like, great.
Wow.
Great. You had a subtle thing, like a nuanced relationship, and it's just like, no, hey guys, let's spell it out for you. Which makes me, again, think the show is for literal children.
But yeah, that's all that really happens in episodes 8 and 9. It's a two-parter with the stone thing. That's all I really have to say about it. Neppy Cat just plays an instrument at the end after he breaks them. They're like,
Oh, yeah.
That's it. Nothing comes of that. It's just a cute
He just
moment. He's like,
vibes.
I love playing instruments. That's it. You ready to move on to episode 10?
Yeah. Well, that was the first part I had to say about episode 10.
Yeah.
So they just started in the most unsubtle way possible.
Yeah, and before that, we have like a cold open, because I wrote about this, so it was kind of weird. They didn't really show this well. They have Rosemary telling a scary story, where she's like, ooh, if you go here, there's a demon at this lake. And then, like, we show Time and Parsley going to, like, a lake. And so it's supposed to imply it's, like, the same thing from the story, but like the story beats don't match up all that well from what she's saying, and it's like you could have done that so much better to make it more one-to-one, but it's just like, oh, it's a lake, you have to connect it in your head. She's talking about the same thing, and then they explain what they're doing at the lake afterwards anyways, so it's like, what was the point of like showing the, it was like an ambitious technique that was confusing, but then they also, because they knew it was going to be confusing, just said it straight up anyways afterwards, and so that bothered me. I was impressed, but like with their attempt, but no, it just didn't work.
Yeah, bad. That's all I gotta say. From here on, my notes are pretty except, actually, wait, this episode in particular, my notes are a little sparse. The next two, I have I have a few notes.
I have a couple where it's like, Rosemary tries to be endearing to Sage by just being more annoying, by going like, I'm gonna call you Sage the Page Mage because you read a lot. And Sage is like, you're just being annoying, can you stop? Bro, can you?
She doesn't say that, she's just like kind of just puts her nose more in her book.
And it's not funny or clever. It doesn't seem like a genuine attempt to win your friend back. Which the whole conflict of this episode is just getting Rosemary to apologize, which she hasn't done for some reason. Which, again, feels like a really kiddie thing. I don't know.
And instead of apologizing, they try to change her memories so that the two have a fight.
They literally try to gaslight Sage into becoming, like, I almost said Stockholm Syndrome.
Which is worse, Homestuck or Stockholm? I'll let you, the viewer, decide.
I couldn't think of it.
What a thought exercise.
But they try to make, like, Sage her Stockholm Syndrome, like, captive of, like, oh, Snapdragon's such a bad person, when they just, like, replace her memories and, like, you know, manipulate her, which is really gross as, like, a concept. But they're like, yeah, let's go with that. Do you have anything more to say on that?
I just remember at one point, Rosemary was, like, trash-talking how Time apologizes. Like, that she's like, oh, I've seen you apologize before. You're gonna need some
that was
backup.
Parsley. But,
and
yeah, Rosemary was also in agreement on that.
Oh, was it? Okay. Rosemary was in the group. But, anyways, Rosemary just doesn't apologize, I guess. You can't be bad at it if you don't do it.
It's a secret to life. You can't be bad at anything if you just don't try.
And so, like, they go on some... The plot basically is two separate plots, which is Time and Parsley summon a demon to talk to Time's dad.
Yeah, about, like, the holy water.
Like, get information about holy water or something, which they fuck up, and then kill the demon. It's just
not at all interesting. Also, I found out, by the way, the demon is voiced by ProZD.
Right.
Not even shitting you.
But the other plot is Amarilla and Rosemary. I'm losing steam. And Rosemary trying to, like, they fuck up the memory spell because at the last minute Rosemary's like, wait, let's not do this, and then they release their worst memories.
Yeah, they shoot it at themselves.
And that's basically all I have to say about that, except for at the very end where Rosemary finally, like, apologizes, and then Snapdragon talks to Amarilla, and the happy piano is playing, and Snapdragon's like, hey, maybe tone it down sometime and don't be such, like, a bully. And she's like, I am who I am, as the happy piano is playing.
Yeah, that's the resolution of the arc. I wanted to talk about that. The resolution to, like, a 3 or 4 episode arc about, like, this tension between Snapdragon and Amaryllis is just, I'm just a jerk sometimes, and that's fine. You can also be yourself. And so Snapdragon's just like, okay, I guess I can still be friends with you. That sounds good enough to me. It just, what is the point of that? Like, it's just, the resolution is just, yeah, I get be yourself is a good thing, but not in this context of where you're just a bully.
Not when you're an asshole.
And you tried to, like, emotionally manipulate your friend with, like, a mind erase spell. I am who I am. That's fine.
It's me, you know, take it or leave it.
There's a couple other things I wrote down here. A lot of it's just recap, but the ideas of, like, their most embarrassing memories coming out is, like, I missed a kickball and I wore a mop on my head.
And I walked into a pole once.
Yeah, while looking at my crush, which they're just not embarrassing memories. It's just like, and I didn't even really pick up until the end that the whole point was that the resolution was going to be that Rosemary apologized, because I assumed she had apologized off screen at some point, and that's why there was the conflict, because I didn't think this was a baby show about learning to apologize. But it's fine. It was just like, why would this be the route that you go for that? And there's a couple other stuff I gotta read through here. Yeah, everything just with Time and Parsley was just really lame because it didn't go anywhere. And also the most embarrassing memory for Rosemary was her mom, like, her crying over her mom abandoning her, which is like, why are you embarrassed about that? That's also,
why are you embarrassed about being
that's traumatizing. And not, like, I get being embarrassed over, like, not accepting that your mom has left, but, like, it's just her crying about her mom, and it's just, I don't know. It was one of those weird moments. There was also a really weird side thing. I have to send you pictures for this. I think, because it's all due to lighting, but between episode 8 and episode 10, because, like, the production of this show is not super good at times, it just looks like that they just changed her race between these two episodes. I'm gonna put something on screen for this, because, like, this is a bold claim to make. It's because she's in the dark and she's shaded, but the shading looks weird to where it looks like she went from being lighter skinned to being, like, pretty darker skinned, just for some reason.
Yeah.
And
I also sent you the, like, fight I was talking about for Samurai Jack.
Yeah.
If you want to overlay
I might
that.
put something like that there. Copyright and stuff might be a problem with that, but
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, you're
you
good.
there.
The whole point, I'm not calling the show racist. It was just, like, I thought it was funny how they just the shading and, like, lighting team did something that it looks like they just changed the race of a character, because it's fine after this episode, but it's just, like, even when accounting for, like, the room darkness, it just looked like she's a different person, and I had to, like, double take and go back to that episode because I thought it was crazy. Yeah, nothing happens in this episode. It's, like, the worst episode, pretty much, of the second half.
Yeah.
Like, even the finale is bad, but it's, like, it's not this bad where just nothing happens.
This was, the second half is my least favorite.
Definitely.
Episode. The next episode is kind of fun, though. At least, I had a lot of fun in, like, the first, like, 6 minutes, especially, because there's, at the very beginning, we just start with, like, them fighting some octopus creature that then turns out to be Calloway.
Yeah. He's just in the robot.
Just in a robot. And so when he gets out and he's congratulating them, one of the students just pulls out a crossbow and tries to assassinate him.
That's right.
And I just have in my notes, wait, why did the student just try to assassinate a teacher with a crossbow and all?
Caraway just looks really squiddish, I guess.
And it's like, he clearly stated that the activity was over. So, like, I was just baffled. I'm like, who the fuck just shot a crossbow bolt at him? And it's just a kid, and he, like, puts it behind his back and starts whistling, like, wasn't me.
Oh, I forgot that at this part, they just randomly drop that the headmasters are immortal. I said that at the beginning in episode 2.
Yeah.
It's episode 11 where they're just like, yeah, we're immortal.
Yeah, I kind of just forgot that it wasn't said. I just assumed, like, I missed something in episode 2.
It was in episode 11, apparently.
Riveting. So anyways, we then, like, they're on a special quest, and then Prosy D is joining them. Not demon Prosy D, transphobic Prosy D.
What's the difference?
Waka waka. Anyways, so, like, immediately as they're going to fight, like, some sea dragon that's turned evil and is starting to eat mermaids, And so like immediately, what's his name? Cal?
Her name's Cal, yeah.
He starts shit talking. For some reason, they put the two guys that like they knew wouldn't get together in a boat, just the two of them. And so like he starts shit talking and be like, "Oh, I bet you're gonna love seeing the mermaids because you dressed up as one. Oh, you know something about manhood." And so he just beats the shit.
That was
out
one of my favorite moments.
like that was pretty cathartic watching it just brawl.
I thought it was gonna be like one punch, but he just keeps beating the shit out of him. Like,
Yeah, and the kid just like throws himself off the boat, and he's like,
I'm out of this episode. See ya.
And then he was.
And then Snapdragon broke his wrist, and they're like, "Well, you can't go down with the mermaids anymore." That's it.
Well, also because he kind of beat the shit out of someone. It's like some sort of punishment.
Yeah.
But anyways, when they put on these mermaid rings, and they have something that's supposed to be like a Sailor Moon
Magical girl
sequence.
transformation thing.
And all I can think of, I gotta send this to you, but it just reminds me of in Kingdom Hearts.
What is
when
Donald doing in the thumbnail?
You're gonna have to post that. But it reminds me of Kingdom Hearts. You're gonna have to find another picture of Sora too. But it just reminds me how they turn into a mermaid, and it's just weird. I don't know why it reminded me of that, but
All right. Yeah.
anyways, they then have to just fight the like dragon thing, and they can't for like the entirety of the episode. The girls doing thing is they are trying to subdue this dragon thing. They call it something. I don't.
It's like the
care enough to
sea
look up
dragon
its
or
name.
something. It's just really generic.
It's like a Sith or something. It had an actual like name. Couldn't care. We learned that Time likes girls.
Yeah. And that's like a
Cool.
good way. They just are like, "Oh, she's blushing at a girl," and she gets nervous around her. Cool. That's all you like. That's just an easy. Why is like the representation not all just like this across everything? It's just good. They don't make a big deal like, "Oh, you like girls?" Sorry, I don't know why, but it's just one of those things. It's like,
But the episode ends in her like in Sage trying to subdue it and accidentally goes crazy with her magic and kills it. Well, it fatally wounds it, which the Rosemary then comes and kills. Which before, at the very beginning of this episode, 2.5 hours ago, I was saying I liked there being consequences for inexperience.
Yeah.
And so I think that was one of the best parts of the show, honestly.
it was pretty good too, but it caught me so off guard where they were just like, "Oh, it's a happy, fun mermaid show," and then they're like, "You have to put down the dragon. His guts are spilling out. You have to provide a fatal blow."
The whole time I was just singing Under the Sea. And just like I pulled up and listened to Sora because I was like, hey, it's like a
Under the Sea.
So I was like, da 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 da. Everything's better down where it's wetter. Take it from me. Anyways, the real like stuff that's happening. In
that
this
part is not at
episode
all interesting, and it's
is-
2/3 of the episode. Like, it's only interesting at the end because of the consequences. But yeah, I just wanted to. I don't know.
The real part of the episode is the whole Snapdragon being like, you wouldn't understand my indecision, like stemming from my gender. I grew up in a toxic masculinity environment. I always had to beat people up, or like I was told you have to beat people up who are in your way by my dad. We get some flashback to kind of reinforce that idea. And then, like, this is where I was like, because we know that Caraway is trans, it's just frustrating. Because he doesn't say anything until the very end of where he's like, well, actually.
Was just like, this is how the arc would
Where it's
go. Like, because you don't interrupt someone when they're talking, but it's still, I mean, except like what I did right there. I am sorry for that. But
Go
yeah,
on.
it just, you know, it's like, because the dramatic irony, we already know what like the reveal is going to be and how they're going to have a talk, and it's just like we're waiting for that moment constantly, and it's just not a good build up to it.
Yeah. And that's kind of it. And he also just, like, because he gives a heartfelt speech, he just has no punishment for beating the shit out of someone.
Yeah.
But he learns about transition magic, and he never has a chance to, use it because he doesn't really...
It's episode 11.
He doesn't really appear in the next episode.
I think it is nice with Snapdragon's arc, like where he starts out beating up Cal on the boat. It's like this big physical reaction, and then we get that backstory of like his dad reinforced, if you want something, punch it because you're a man, and how he's conflicting with those ideals. A little bit of it felt a little too on the nose with like where he's talking about, I don't like being man and man things, but you wouldn't know anything about that. And
yeah, that's what I mean. If it was just like a
that felt like talking to the camera a little bit.
That's
but it was pretty decent. Other than that,
yeah. And another thing about Sage's inexperience and like the consequences is that it could make an interesting progression to a second season, like for her art,
right?
Especially when showcasing something like the actual differences between old and new magic. You know, besides old magic tiring you out and new magic requiring a charge.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like new magic can be unstable or something, maybe.
Yeah. And we had a little bit of lead up to that with like her flying around on like a broom in a billion episodes ago with like her new magic, which was good because it's like we know that she's not entirely in control of it yet. But yeah, I wish they would do more with that. I think it's a good setup. I agree with you. And then,
but I also don't want a second season to exist.
Yeah, in its current state. If someone else produces it and they make a completely remake of season 1 and they made it okay, then yeah, it maybe the second season should exist, but in its current state.
Yeah, I want to let's see Trigger do it.
Just have Kamina in it, and he has the whole trans arc about like talking to someone. It's like, don't believe in me, believe in the you that believes in yourself, and that's it. They just reuse Kamina like that. He just shows up. I did like at the end, Snapdragon's talking to Amaryllis, and it's like, what if I started changing myself? And there's like the reassurance of like, as long as you're not tacky, which is her way of saying, you know, I like you.
That was cute.
Yeah.
But also it's weird having the bully being the one to be like, yeah, I like you.
Because they're best friends, I get it. And it's like, there's just kind of a hard relationship. They kind of all become friends near the second half, which I don't get as much, because she like comes off as really bullyish and she doesn't really learn her lesson, it feels like. She just becomes less of a bully.
Yeah.
Kind of a side tangent from that. But yeah, episode 11, it has the much better, like, people get to episode 3 and they just meme about the transition magic, but like it comes into play in episode 11 for a much better like payoff arc that I don't think is perfect, but I think it's way better than like what people see, because I saw clips being passed around on Twitter about episode 3 where they're like, guys, look how bad it is, he says I'm transgender to the camera.
That's where I got that spoiled for me from Twitter.
Yeah, and just people making it out like that's the only thing that they do with it, when it's not. They actually build on it a little bit, and it's not that bad. That scene, I think, is pretty bad, but the arc that follows with that scene is actually pretty decent.
Yeah, I think Snapdragon's arc is probably one of my favorites in the show.
But yeah, nothing happens with episode 11, weirdly enough. Like in episode 12, it kind of is completely isolated from it.
Yeah, it was just kind of a weird one-off right before the end. Just to like tie up the Snapdragon arc.
Yeah, pretty much, because they were just like, we got to go someplace with mermaids.
Really affected. Oh yeah, something I have to say about episode 12. This is one of the problems where it's like, why is Rosemary the one brooding about having to kill the thing? Like, all she did was deal with... She was only the one that dealt
and
the
had
fatal
to kill
blow.
it.
Oh no, she didn't deal the fatal blow. She just put it out of its misery.
Yeah.
Like, why is Sage coming up to be like, oh, I'm sorry, I know you feel that way. Sage should be the one down in the dump. She killed it, like, by not being able to control her magic.
Right.
So, like, why is she not like, oh God, what have
They
I
should
done?
both be really sad about it, but at the same time...
But Rosemary's in a better position,
You
I
can't
think.
have the character that had it the worst comforting the one that had it the second worst. Dramatically the second
That's
worst.
what I mean when it's like... And near the beginning, I was just like, yeah, they don't know who to apply emotions to. Like, the harder of emotions to.
Yeah, it's just really weird. They're like, we want to have this general feeling, but, like, that character through line just doesn't happen. Just at episode 12. Because it's like, this is where we get the, oh, shit, we should probably wrap up the plot and have, like, a good finale. But they didn't build up to it hardly at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they just introduce a character that, like, we've heard the name of in passing, but not enough to be like, oh shit, he's here.
Yeah, it's just, oh, we have the character that is the eviler version of of Olive. His name is Mandrake. I almost forgot.
I like how he makes a joke at one point where it's like, at least my name's not something stupid like Aster. It's Mandrake.
Yeah, it's just because it's a scene of library. He's like, it's M for Mandrake, not stupid like A for Aster. And it's just some weird angst out of nowhere. It's kind of funny, though.
And speaking of Mandrake, the way they introduce the character, it's like they have to make him comically evil.
Yeah.
Where he's just like, sees a cat, he's like, can I break its neck? Like, that's the second line he says in the show.
Hey, I think he's evil. Maybe?
Well,
Whoa.
no, I was like, this is the guy in the dark cloak, like he is introduced by being in a dark cloak, who is being sent by the bad guys. I think we know he's the bad guy.
Well, you have to show it because he wants to kill cats. And, like, it's like the Ironwood thing in Ruby where you gotta have him shoot civilians for no reason. He's bad, guys! I'm still making that, by the way. It's just taking forever. Sorry. But the side tangent on that.
I mean, everything else we've talked about this episode... I did make a bet at one point where I was like... I wrote down, I haven't watched the full episode, but I'm betting on some bullshit that he's her brother or something.
Yeah, I mean...
Never came
You
true.
were not at all right, but also there is some family tie stuff at the very end that I will talk about. But, yeah, at the very beginning, the two villains are talking, and so the whole entire thing that they're building up to is that Rosemary's mom, Lavender, is missing, and then, just Olive is like, yeah, she's back in, like, which country, and alive. Because we thought she might be dead.
That happens like midway through the episode, not at the beginning.
It's at the beginning of my notes, so it's probably further in than I have it listed, but it's just in there. It's just dropped in conversation.
Like when they're already in the school.
Yeah, it's like, that's not something you can just drop in conversation, like, oh, she's alive. It's like you gotta build up to that. It's just...
Yeah, it just ruins
It's
the
just
twist.
there. That's it. This episode is pretty bad, too. I don't think it's as bad as episode 10. A lot of, like, stuff happens, and, like, there's meaning to everything, but...
I mean, they make him out to be someone who doesn't really trust anyone, and then he makes the point to, like, trust someone who has obviously been hesitant. So hesitant to the point that he had to be called in for her incompetency.
Yeah,
And then he's like, oh, you're not hesitant? Okay, go do it.
like, I have
I was like, no, this is obviously a guy who has a knife to everyone's back, even his allies.
Yeah, he has, like, a knife to the hero's throat, literally, and is about to kill one of them, and then the side henchman's like, wait a minute, let me do it. Why? Well, because I'm not hesitant anymore, and you know you can trust me because I haven't backstabbed you 12 times. Well, okay. And then, she stabs the bad guy, because why wouldn't she? She's really untrustworthy.
Whoa,
it's dumb. But before we get, like, into that later stuff, just randomly, we don't get any explanation. It's like they say the thing about, like, her being in which country, the mom, because the next scene they show her at the school, so that way we know she's not real. But they trick Rosemary, and it's like, oh, there's Lavender, her mom. What are you doing here? And then she just, like, almost stabs Rosemary, the shapeshifter guy, Mandrake. But then he just hears about the professor. He's like, Professor Caraway? Bye.
He was about to just murder
She was in
her.
a
It's
vulnerable
just like,
position,
oh, nope.
literally would just be dead. She could...
Just alone.
He could have just killed Rosemary and then gone off to the professor, but he just left. We don't know why.
And, like, it would have taken time to find that body. She was off in some bumfuck nowhere corner.
Yeah, she went into, like, the labyrinth with, like, a secret, Harry Potter style, like, dungeon wall that opened. You could have just, like, closed the door and left her body, like, on the floor, and it would have been fine, probably. But then, like, we get a scene with, like, Caraway, the professor, and then a second one comes in, and it's like, oh, it's a shapeshifter. Who's the real one? And that's all right, I think, personally. It's what happens after that I don't like.
Yeah.
If you have anything to say on that.
Not really. I think I've said most of... there's a point where, he, like, sets the place on fire and attempts to lock all of the students in one room and all the professors to just kill everyone in a locked room.
Mm-hmm.
And so Amaryllis asks for, like, magic helpers. And so up until this point, I'd thought that, like, new magic or old magic was, like, dead, because the teacher was making fun of her for using old magic.
Right.
Which is like, if the teacher is making fun of you for doing that, that's out of date. Like, no one's doing that.
Also,
like, it'd be me using a floppy disk right now, right?
I hate that teacher because she was reading yaoi. Side note, that was it.
She did read. Someone was like, "What are you reading?" She's like, "Oh, trash." And it's
just yaoi smut.
Yeah. But anyways, I get the feeling like they've set up the show where it's like using old magic is like using floppy disks. No one does it. Like no one. But there's this point where she's just like, "Hey, can I get the old magic users to do this and the new ones to do this?" And it's like, wait. You're telling me there's a like sizable group of old magic users here still?
Yeah, and like.
Why has it constantly been talked about in the show that is not normal when, like, they could split them into two significant groups?
Yeah, I figured it would be because, like, Sage came from a really small town where it's like maybe old magic is the only practical thing. It's like she's very unique in that way because it's a small town and these all are people from like bigger cities. But no, I didn't catch that when I watched it, but it makes a lot of sense when you say it. It's like, why are there so many of them? It's like CinemaSins tier or whatever, but it's still just like weird that they didn't go into that.
No, I wouldn't say it's CinemaSins tier because it is specific to Sage's arc being that she is the only one. So it is specific. It is
or that it's a big deal.
To a larger arc overall. Yeah, not just a plot hole.
It's just like they didn't expand on it enough, so it's kind of just weird. Yeah. There was something in the library too that okay, wait, I gotta go to the shapeshifter thing first, because it's every single time, like 5 times, you hear a character off screen, or it's a character that's shown for the first time in a scene. They just make it out that it's the shapeshifter, which means that as an audience member, you're not guessing, like, oh, is this person the shapeshifter? You're just like, it's a shapeshifter. All the time. For some reason. They just never write a scene where it's the normal person, which is what you do in a shapeshifter show, right? Like, I'm not crazy. Yeah. You have to do that. And so they don't. It's fine, I guess. It's not, but I'm getting tired, man.
It's whatever.
I'm just losing energy on talking about this, but we're at the end.
I do like Olive just stabbing the guy and killing him, and that's how we resolve that.
Yeah, like he doesn't die there, but it's
she doesn't kill him. He doesn't die, but
makes him run away.
How did they defeat him?
He gets Kamehameha'd on the roof later.
Oh yeah, because she combines old magic and new magic, which is just a concept that hasn't been introduced until this episode.
Yeah, I mean,
but I mean, fair. They made it sound like it was a complex subject where it's like, look, when you're like a third year, we'll
like this will happen in 2 seasons or something, but it happens now.
Yeah. And honestly, do you have anything else to say about the episode?
Still more, but it's like kind of minor stuff I'm looking through. Because it's stuff like how they say, oh, Rose, that was clever. And it's like, you don't have to say that if it's clever, all that. There was a weird audio thing where you could hear, like, it sounded like someone was blowing into the mic. Like, the fire sound on the roof was literally clipping the mic. It was weird.
We were in a call together at that point. We were just screaming because I was ready for the show to be over.
Yeah.
Like we went monkey mode doing that last little
Sage
bit.
cuts her hair. It doesn't really mean anything because it's just she was stuck under a rock and she had to cut it. It wasn't like an emotional thing. It should have been a bigger moment.
Yeah, it wasn't like to signal that she was a new person or something like that. It was just, hey, why
that
not?
might be like my anime mindset or whatever, where it's like I think it has to have meaning. But yeah. They said the name of the
it's good for things to happen in your story that have meaning.
This show would not have you believe that, actually. They say the name of the show at the end of the show. They're like, what are we, some kind of high guardian spice? Not actually that, but, it's the name of their team. It's just, oh, wow, they said it. That's it. Just nothing felt explored enough in this show. Just bunch of garbage. Ugh.
Bunch of garbage.
3 out of 10. Like, there's some cool stuff, but just it's so disappointing. And not at all for the reasons that people will have you believe, like SJW, whatever, because it's not that. It's just not a well-made show.
It's just poorly written.
And like, this could have been money. I will say, I think it's valid to say this money could have been put into something that Crunchyroll could buy, but I don't think Crunchyroll's lacking on money to buy licensing for things. It's just like they wanted to do a side thing, and it just didn't turn out well.
They should have dumped it into their VTuber.
Oh, one more thing. The post-credits scene. You can talk. I've been talking so much. I'm sorry.
What? Do you mean the reveal that we already knew that, like, oh, hey, look, Lavender, Rosemary's mother, is in Witchtown, but she's the bad guy? What?
Yeah, she gets revealed as the bad guy.
Whatever. It's probably gonna be. They're probably, if they get a second season, it'll be something dumb like, oh, the root is affecting her too.
The rot is draining her of magic.
The rot, not the root. I keep thinking of Remnant from the Ashes, where the bad guy was called the Root.
Well, also the rot is on the root of the trees a lot in this show, so you're not wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's a cliffhanger ending. That's just, oh guys, look at this crazy twist in the credits. Can't wait for the next season. And this show's just a bunch of... I'm really tired now. It's weird when I get tired, too, because I end up talking more than I need to. Like, I will just keep on talking more and more, and I have trouble cutting it off. Is there any last things that you wanted to say?
Yeah. This show's bad. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Oh shit, I almost fell on my chair.
That's karma coming in. Ooh, Ghost's gonna get you.
Alright. Well, let's end this before my karmic balance realigns and kills me.
Alright, that's it. You wanna plug anything while you're here? If you made it this far, thank you. It's been like 2.5 hours.
Check out our Discord. Link will be in the description.
Yeah. All our stuff is there.
Pop in, say, hey, wow, that sounded like a bad show. And we'll agree with you.
We both stream on Twitch. We're playing Ace Attorney right now. This is gonna be like a quick plug. We just do things on Thursdays typically. I do some stuff on Sundays. A lot of stuff you can just catch up on in the Discord. I'm planning on making more videos here. I stream over on Twitch, all that.
I'm working on one too.
Yeah, Nick's...
I'm working on an anime video about Run with the Wind, but...
Yeah, I have like a Ruby video in the works, and possibly another shorter one condensing like some of the stuff we said here, because there's like some scenes that I want to talk about, because I feel like they're being misrepresented online in what ways they are bad. That's it. Bye.